House will be in order. All those not having privileges to the floor will please vacate the chamber. Members and guests will please rise as we're led in prayer today by Ladina Teets, who is the guest of Delegates Soppold and Jennings. Ms. Teets.
Sorry. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, just now we thank you. We thank you for the great state of West Virginia. We thank you for that wild and wonderful rivers and mountains that we so happily call home. Heavenly Father, we asked you to be with this delegation in the House, the men and women here who are working for the state of West Virginia. Bless them, dear Lord. Have them do your will to make this state as great as it can be. Heavenly Father, just now we asked you to be with the people of West Virginia. Help us with this opioid addiction. Help us with the struggles of just being mountain people. Thank you, dear Lord. Through Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Members will please remain standing as the Preston County High School Junior ROTC will present the colors. Will now be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the lady from the 52nd, Delegate Soppold.
Will everyone join as we do the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading the journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Monday, January 29, 2018.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 51st, Delegate Statler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
The gentleman 51st asks unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Journal is approved as having been read. Gentleman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, today we have a citation presentation honoring Monongalia County. To receive the citation, we have officials and citizens from Monongalia County. Escorting our guests into the chamber are Delegates Statler, Williams, Piles, Fritsch, and Fleischauer.
Clerk, please read the citation.
Whereas Monongalia County is known as the Mother County in reference to the many other counties created from its original territory. Monongalia County was founded in 1776 from the West Augusta County of Virginia, following small settlements along the Monongahela River and its tributaries to the Ohio River, and settled by a small group of people along the banks of Deckers Creek. And whereas Monongalia County, being the third largest county by population, 104,622 of the 55 counties of West Virginia, has had an annual growth rate exceeding 1.6% for more than a decade. And whereas Monongalia County was recognized by the West Virginia Association of Counties with the first Patty Hamilton Imagine Award for the efforts of community leaders from the public and private sectors to cooperate and collaborate on new ways to solve the region's problems. And whereas Monongalia County is home to West Virginia University, a public land-grant institution founded in 1867 and recognized as a top research university by the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. WVU welcomes and shapes the minds of students from across the state of West Virginia, every state in the United States, and approximately 100 other nations. And whereas Monongalia County has an award-winning baseball park, which is the home of the West Virginia University baseball team and the home of the West Virginia Black Bears minor league team, that provide all our citizens the ability to follow our baseball heroes throughout their Pittsburgh Pirates career. And whereas Monongalia County offers to its citizens and visitors from around the world the best in medical care, tourism experiences from Mountain Fest to the University Arts Series, a beautiful view from Cooper's Rock to a peaceful stroll on the Caperton Trail, top-rated educational experiences at all levels, a thriving and innovative business community, a nationally acclaimed economic model, and a place that offers big city amenities with the neighborly feel of small-town life. And whereas Monongalia County has been recognized in recent years in the following ways: Best Performing Small Metros, Best Small Metros for Business and Careers, Best Quality of Life and Knowledge Worker Metros, Smart Places to Live, Morgantown Top College Destination, Designated Retirement Community, Best Places to Retire for Under $100 a Day, Adventure Town, Best Small Town to Live, and Best Sports Cities. And whereas in Monongalia County, from Blacksville to Star City, from Westover to Granville, in the heart of Morgantown, and everywhere in between, every day is a great day to be a mountaineer. Therefore, the House of Delegates of the West Virginia Legislature hereby recognizes Monongalia County and directs this citation be presented.
Members and guests, please be at ease a moment while I present citation. gentleman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, today we have a citation presentation honoring Preston County. To receive the citation, we have officials and citizens from Preston County. Escorting our guests into the chamber are delegates Seipolt and Jennings.
Clerk, please read the citation.
Whereas Preston County was formed from Monongalia County by order of the Virginia Assembly January 19, 1818, and is named for Virginia Governor James Patton Preston. And whereas Preston County is celebrating its bicentennial in 2018. And whereas Preston County is bordered on the north by the Mason-Dixon line, made famous as the line between free and slave states before the Civil War. And whereas Preston County has 10 incorporated municipalities: Albright, Brandonville, Brewston Mills, Kingwood, Masontown, Newburgh, Reedsville, Rollsburg, Terra Alta, and Tunnelton. And whereas Preston County has 19 entries on the National Register of Historic Places, 5 wildlife management areas, part of Cooper's Rock State Forest and Monongalia National Forest, and 2 state parks, Cathedral State Park and Fairfax Stone State Park. And whereas West Virginia National Guard Camp Dawson, chartered in 1909 and located in Preston County, has grown to offer training opportunities for many of the various components of active and reserve armed forces. And whereas Preston County is home to the Buckwheat Festival, a tradition that began in 1938 and continues to this day. And whereas the first of several model planned communities nationwide, Arthurdale, was established in 1933 and 1934 under the Federal Homestead Act as a pet project of Eleanor Roosevelt to assist the unemployed through self-sufficient farming and handicrafts. And whereas the House of Delegates is proud to celebrate the history and culture of Preston County at the Capitol. Therefore, the House of Delegates of the West Virginia Legislature hereby recognizes Preston County Day and directs this citation be presented.
If members and guests please be at ease in a moment while I greet our guests and present the citation, and if our guests would stay with us a moment as I recognize when I return to the podium the lady from the 16th for an announcement. The lady from 16th, Doug Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will you all please join me in singing happy birthday to Preston County? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Preston County. Happy birthday to you.
Members will please escort our honored guests from the chamber. Introduction of guests. The gentleman from the 62nd, Delegate Overton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Berkeley County delegation, I'd like to introduce a group of 25 people that made the trek down here despite cold weather, snow, ice, everything else. They came down here to learn more about the Capitol and to remember us down here. Would Pastor Corey Bain and those that accompanied him please stand, and the House give them a warm West Virginia welcome. Mr. Speaker, this is the fourth year that they have been down here to meet with us. They are representing West Virginia Capital Connection. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John from 39th, Doug Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have two guests. Pastor Barkley, who is from Maranatha Baptist in Sissonville, and he's so interested in the local community, he often attends the Sissonville Community Development meetings, and if he would please stand, I'd like you all to make him welcome. And also in the gallery, I have Rick Stonestreet, who works with the AARP. He works very hard for his cause, and he's been in these halls for many years, and I hope he will stand and the delegates make him welcome. Thank you very much.
John from the 7th, Delegate Harshbarger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have two constituents from Ritchie County joining us for session up in the West Gallery, Scott Goff and Scott Wyndham. You guys please make them welcome. Thank you.
If I could as well, with the group that was just introduced by the gentleman from 39th, we have Pastor Lee Soar, who is the pastor of Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, and I believe he has some guests as well with him. Their church was flooded during the 2016 flood, and they just recently were able to reopen their sanctuary, and I was pleased to be able to join them for that, and I would ask Pastor Soar to stand and that the House make him welcome. John from 28, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the delegation from Raleigh County, we have 3 pages with us here today from Clear Fork Elementary. We have Carson Williams, Carrie Meadows, and Caitlin Burgess. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the gentleman from the 28th, Mr. Cooper, we have a good friend of mine who is in the West Gallery, Mr. Sam Childers. If the House please make him welcome.
Lady from 52nd, Agasapo.
Yes, I would just like to report that we served over 600 this morning with those famous buckwheat cakes, and also the breakfast that we served, the eggs, the potatoes, everything was made with Preston County products, and the students was from Preston High, from the Pro Star class that we have there at the vocational school, and we're very proud of them that they made the trip down to help serve the breakfast this morning. And also we had a busload of students coming from Preston High, and due to the fact I understand that we have about 8 inches of snow on the ground up north, that busload of students did not make it down to join us this morning. So, but 600 I think was our nice round number to serve buckwheat cakes to this morning. So I hope everybody enjoyed that.
Lady from the 49th, Doug Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the North Gallery, we have the Taylor County Youth and Government Seminar Group. And I would just like to say I had the pleasure of spending the entire day with the 8th graders at that school at the beginning of January. And I was very proud to see their interest in state government and the respect that they showed for the government and its people. So it was very enjoyable. But if they would please stand and the House make them welcome. Tori Caton, Grayson Perkey, Emma Friedley, Peyton Shreve, Stephanie Collins, Maddie Floor, Ainsley McCartney, Adrian Campbell, Brooke Hodges, Mackenzie Floor, Sydney Summers, Braden McCullough, Elias Rubenstein, Blade Pennell, Matthew Helmandaler, and Aiden Fancher. And their chaperones are Lindsay Shaw, Valerie Morrow, Lindsay Stepanek, and Stacy Summers. So if everyone would please make them welcome.
Lady from the 18th, Doug Sabonia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the North Gallery, I'm pleased to introduce some guests we have today. They represent the West Virginia Association of Realtors Leadership Academy. If they would stand and be recognized in the House, please make them feel welcome.
John from the 14th, Doug Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Mason County delegation, I'd like to represent some dedicated folks from Mason County. And if these folks would stand up as I call their names, they're in the South Gallery. We have County Commissioner Sam Nybert. We have Mason County Superintendent of Schools Jack Cullen. We have County School Board members Megan Bonecutter, Rhonda Tennant, Jared Billings, and Dale Shobe. Would the House please welcome them?
John from the 52nd, Delegate Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to, for the House to make welcome a group of people that I met with last night from Preston County. They're a little younger than me, but they are very, very spirited. And it's a senior group from Preston County. It's a very good group. It's a very large group. Some of them are in the North Gallery, some are in the West Gallery, and they are represented by Jenny Lou. She moves them around, gets them every place they're supposed to go, and I'd like for the House to make welcome. Also, we have our county commissioners here. In the North Gallery. All three of them are here, and happens that one of them is my son, Craig Jennings, Dave Price, and is Dawn with you? Is Dawn here? He's here somewhere, but all three commissioners, and they represent Preston County very well. They are very proud of what went on here today, and if you would, give them a welcome. And one more thing, if you thought it smelt good when you walked in the Capitol building today, in Preston County at the last Thursday in September, if you drive through Preston County and roll your windows down, you will smell the same thing, no matter where you go in Preston County. So you're all welcome to the last Thursday, that weekend in September. Thank you.
John from the 45th, Delegate Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today from Upshur County, by the way, it's the oldest Republican county in West Virginia, I believe. We have visiting on behalf of the retired teachers and school service personnel. If they'd please stand as I mention your name. Vernon Bennett, John Heyman, Penny Heyman, Corrine Wamsley, and Larry Wamsley. If the House would please make them welcome.
The gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you join the Wood County delegation in welcoming my good friend in the West Gallery, former City Councilman Roger Brown. Roger, if you'd stand, please, and have the House please make him feel welcome. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 47th, Delegate Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From Barber County today, we have a page, and he is a student at Casson Elementary. His name is Grant Scola. He was right here. Right here he is. Wave, Grant. And with him is his father, Jed, who is in the balcony to my right. Jed, if you'd please stand. If everyone would make them feel welcome.
John for the 11th, Delegate Atkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have in the South Gallery visiting with us Sybil Hickman, Carol Williams, Dennis and Diana Carpenter, if they'd please stand. And they represent the Roane County Association of Retired School Employees. Would the House please make them welcome?
Lady for the 51st, Delegate Fritsch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Montague County delegation, we have visitors from Montague County, as you've seen, and they've brought us some boxed lunches from Montague County prepared by Pace. So if they are still in the galleries today, I'd ask that they stand so the House can make them feel welcome.
John from 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the entire Kanawha County delegation, we have some visitors joining us in the South Gallery from the Laborers Local 1353 here in Charleston. Please stand up, and would the members please make them feel welcome.
John for the 19th, Delegate Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In follow-up to Mr. Pushkin's announcement, we have two special people here, are longtime friends of mine. One of those people is Shane Dillon. And Shane, if you would, please stand up. And Willis Hunley. Both of these gentlemen hail from Wayne County and are members of the, as I refer to it, the 543 laborers, but it's now the 1353 laborers. House, please make them and their fellow friends and members a warm welcome.
John for the 19th, Delegate Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Hicks, we have a page here from Buffalo Elementary School. His name is Coy Smith, so if he would please rise and everybody give him a warm welcome.
John for the 24th, Delegate Ruggiero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I have some pages today. Let me pull them up here. I'm sorry. Okay, they're students from South Man Elementary School. We have Jackson Kahn and his mother Jennifer. We have Peyton Lusk and her parents Chad and Whitney and their grandmother. We have Debbie Caudle and their parents Ian and Kelly, and they're accompanied by Cassie Smoot and their counselor Diane Evans. And we also have 50 students from Chapmanville West Grade School. And would the floor please make them welcome?
John from the 4th, Doug Canestraro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I am blessed to have a very special guest in the South Gallery, my nephew, Alexander Michael Canestraro. He's here with the youth and government students from Ohio County Schools, and he's an 8th grader at Bridge Street Middle School. I'm very proud of the young man that he's becoming, so I would ask the House to please make him feel welcome.
John from the 16th, Doug Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two groups here today. First, on behalf of the Cabell County delegation, I would like for us to bring a warm welcome to a group of retired school employees. Please stand to your feet as I say your name. We first have Dennis Chapman, we have Irvin Scarberry, and we have Mary Gill. House, please make them feel welcome. And with us today in the chamber, we also have a group from the ACLU and trans activists. Please make them feel welcome as well.
John from 29th, Doug Moy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of all the delegates that represent Raleigh County, I have two announcements today, some very special guests. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to my pastor, Roger Pauley, if he'd stand up. And he's accompanied by several other gentlemen from our church, Ty Thomas, Brad Nesbitt, and Chase Whitten. And all these are very good folks from Raleigh County. You ever come to Raleigh County, I highly suggest you come to Cranberry Baptist Church and visit us. And if the House would make these guests welcome, I would appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, we also have with us from Raleigh County some teachers. They're very special guests for us today. We have Leslie Gerald. Would y'all stand when I call your names, please? We have Susie Davis and Wendy Peters. And, oh, I see them up there. If our House would make these very special friends of mine welcome, I'd appreciate it.
John from 3rd, Doug Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Storch and myself, I'd like to welcome a group of young leaders from the Northern Panhandle who are going to build a better tomorrow for West Virginia. And when you hear your name, will you please stand? Caden Cunningham, Grace Moore, Ashley Coleman, Gavin Barish, Lauren Taylor, Maggie Fuller, Alex Canestraro, Davey McKinley, Michelle Strope, Debbie Micker. They're here with Youth Leadership Association. Hopefully I'll see a lot of you this evening. Please make them feel welcome.
John from the 17th, Doug Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the Cabell delegation, I want to welcome four special guests. These are active Cabell County school teachers. If you'd stand when I say your name and the House will welcome you. Vera Miller, Danny Parent, Adam Culver, and Andrea Nicely. Would the House please make these fine teachers feel welcome?
John from 22nd, David Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Maynard, Miller, Romine, Hornbuckle, and myself, we have some guests here today from Lincoln County, the home of General Charles Chuck Yeager. We have some youth and government people here, social studies teacher Randy Schultz, she'll please stand up, and Jeanette Cremines, English teacher from Lincoln County, Eli Beaver, Aiden McClung, Samuel Carroll, and Peyton Browning. If you all would please stand up and give him a warm welcome.
John from 46, Doug Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have some guests from Lewis County, some retired dedicated school employees. If they would please stand. And also, I think, I'm not sure which gallery they're in, but we have some county commissioners from Upshur County, Terry Cutright and Sam Nolte. If they would stand, the House, please make them feel welcome.
John from 32nd, Doug Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my colleagues from the 32nd, Delegate Fast and Delegate Kessinger, it's with great pleasure I have the opportunity to introduce a very distinguished guest from Fayette County. He provides economy for our county and the state of West Virginia. He provides jobs, good-paying jobs, over 100 for Fayette County, but plus he provides recreation for thousands of people who come to Fayette County to ride the rafts on the second oldest river in the United States of America. Sitting in the South Gallery, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the owner of Rivers Expeditions in Oak Hill, Mr. Rick Johnson. Let's give Rick a big hand.
John with the 50th, Delegate Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of my colleagues, Delegate Ward and Delegate Longstreth, we have a special guest in the gallery today down here with the AARP. Spends a lot of time down here concerned about their issues. Please welcome Mr. Gary Wick to the chamber. Stand up, Gary.
John from the 4th, Delegate Farrow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Delegate Canistraro and I would like to welcome two former teachers from Marshall County representing the West Virginia retired school employees. Would Gary and Linda Snodgrass please rise and let the House make them welcome?
Lane from 35th, Delegate Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just found out that my fellow delegate, Moore Capito, and his wife delivered a baby boy, and they are all doing well. And guess what? We have a new Arch Moore amidst us.
The members, a moment ago, I introduced Pastor Sword from Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. I noticed as well one of the other pastors from the church, Reagan Jett, is here. And I would ask him and any other guests we have from Mount Pleasant Baptist Church and Elk Valley Christian School in Elkview to please stand and the House make them welcome. For our introductions. Reports of standing committees.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2612, repealing section relating to unattended motor vehicles and penalties. Reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass.
Report be received.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 4138, requiring certain public or private schools and daycare centers to install carbon monoxide detectors, and House Bill 4199, permitting a nursing home to use trained individuals to administer medication. Reports back committee substitutes, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitutes each do pass.
The report be received.
Your Joint Committee on Enrolled Bills has examined, found truly enrolled, and on January 29, 2018, presented to His Excellency the Governor, Senate Bill 263, eliminating film tax credits.
The report be received. Reports of select committees. Messages from the Executive.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Armstead presents a communication from His Excellency the Governor advising that on January 29, 2018, he approved Senate Bill 263.
Message will be received. Messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announces a passage by the Senate of Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 7 relating to claims under Wage Payment and Collection Act.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 51 relating to domestic relations.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 280 allowing airports, emergency management, and operation vehicles to use red flashing warning lights.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Roads and Transportation and then the Judiciary. Resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 35, United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal George W. Henry.
Resolution be referred to the Committee on Rules.
House Concurrent Resolution 36, Betty Jo DeLong Memorial Bridge.
Resolution be referred to the Committee on Roads and Transportation, then to Rules. Petitions. Motions. For what purpose the gentleman from 36 seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move we postpone indefinitely House Bill 4006.
The gentleman from the, let me see.
It's on second reading.
Yeah, here it is right here.
Bill got before us. I know he's
The gentleman, the bill is on second reading, but it is not before us at this moment. The appropriate time would be when the bill is on second reading and read a second time to make such a motion. I'm advised by the clerk and the parliamentarian.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bill's introduced.
House Bill 4347 relating to voluntary contributions to the West Virginia State Police Forensic Laboratory Fund.
Gentleman from the 15th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that they be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
Gentleman 15th, ask unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with. Each bill be considered formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Each bill be considered formally introduced and so referred. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2799 prohibiting the superintendent of schools from requiring a physical examination to be included to the application for a minor's work.
Request for the House is the passage of the bill. The gentleman from the 33rd, Doug Hanshaw, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Before us is House Bill 2799, which will look familiar to those members of the House who were here last year. This bill passed the House 87-12 last year and relates to the narrow circumstances under West Virginia law under which 14 and 15-year-old students seek work permits from their county to engage in employment outside the school context. So under West Virginia law, there's a four-part process right now under which a 14 and 15-year-old student gets a work permit. Part one is completed by the prospective employer, in which the employer fills out the job duties and the expected hours that the student will work. Part two is the permission of the student's parent that attests to yes, the student has parental permission to work. Part three is a statement by the student's principal in which the student's principal certifies that yes, the student is actually enrolled in school and is doing all those things that students do to be in good standing in school. And then part four brings us to the substance of this bill. Part four is a role for the county superintendent of schools. And it's the county superintendent of schools that actually issues the permit. And under applicable Division of Labor rules right now, the superintendent of schools must attest that the student seeking the work permit has physically appeared before the actual superintendent, not his or her designee, but the superintendent of schools. And the practical application of this rule turns out to be that in most cases, the student has to be signed out of school by a parent, taken to the central office to see the superintendent in person before the superintendent may then issue that permit in compliance with DOL rules as they stand on the books today. This bill makes two changes to that law. It removes the requirement that the superintendent physically attest that the student appeared before him or her in person, and it prohibits the superintendent of schools from requiring a physical examination In other words, sending the kid to the doctor to get a physical before issuing that work permit. The superintendent still will sign off on the permit, will still issue the permit. The superintendent simply will no longer be required to attest that the student showed up and stood before him or her and gotten the physical. I urge passage of the bill.
Are there other members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 48th, Delegate Iaquinta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You mentioned that the work permits, if you apply for it, somebody checks. Who in the state of West Virginia checks?
Gentleman, you.
I'm sorry.
Permit?
Yes, sir.
So that entire process is managed with oversight by the Division of Labor.
Well, not too recently, in a classroom, I encountered a young student that has 3 part-time jobs. 3 part-time jobs. And my point being, we let a lot of students obtain the work permits, but I'm not too sure we're following up on them. Is that possible?
Might well be the subject of a bill. It's not the subject of this bill.
Well, how do I know that we're actually checking up on students with work permits that we're issuing?
I suppose you could call the Division of Labor. That's the entity in the state that actually has ultimate oversight authority for the entire process here. The role of the county superintendent, is, either before this bill or after it, is simply to attest that the student has met those requirements spelled out in the law.
Well, if we have some students that are working more than 1 part-time job, I don't think we realize it in this body. And I would like to find the people that are responsible for checking on students that are issued work permits in our state that once they leave the school, we don't have any control of.
That is a perfectly fair question. I don't want to speak for Division of Labor, but if they are listening in today, I expect that is information they could provide us, and we could solicit it from them.
Thank you.
Gentleman from the 50th, Delegate Caputo. Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Just a quick question on the physical. For a student to obtain a work permit today, he or she needs a physical. That's a requirement?
It is not a requirement, no, sir.
It is not a requirement. Then walk me through the part you described about the physical for the student.
So the part of this bill that relates to the physical exam is a statement that the county superintendent may not add additional requirements above and beyond the law. So the county superintendent, on his or her own initiative, may not say, I'm only issuing work permits in circumstances in which the student has gone and gotten a physical. Now, there are examples in which the employer is requiring a physical, and that's totally unchanged by the bill.
I understand that. Okay, so what this does, and I just want to make sure I understand it, because I was one that voted against it last year, and I'm trying to figure this out on the physical part. So it never was a requirement that a student had to have a physical by the Board of Education or by the school superintendent. That never was a requirement.
I can't say that it never was. It's not now.
It's not now. So the only thing this is doing is making sure that a superintendent does not make that part of the requirement?
That's yes, sir. Your statement's correct.
Thank you very much.
Further members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, does the gentleman from 33rd wish to close debate? Thank you. Question before the House is the passage of the bill. Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. The gentleman from the 33rd, your vote. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 91 ayes, 4 nays, 4 members absent not voting. Majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk, please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2799.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk, please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Further bills on third reading.
House Bill 4010, providing no requirement to perform or host a marriage ceremony that does not conform to sincerely held religious beliefs.
Question for the House is the passage of the bill. The gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, there is a distinct lack of clarity over the power of government to regulate the solemnization of marriages. Unlike most English countries, the Anglo-American model permits religious authorities to solemnize civil marriages. Now, generally, the conventional wisdom in American jurisprudence is that clergy enjoy a First Amendment right not to participate in weddings. The First Amendment essentially prohibits the state from adjudicating theological disputes and selecting churches' ministers. So it is argued, the government would violate fundamental constitutional values if it ordered clergy to perform marriages in purely religious ceremonies, even if those ceremonies have a civil consequence. However, some commentators have theorized that it is possible that the government could impose a condition on its grant of the authority to solemnize marriages and could require the celebrant to be willing to serve all couples. This bill, the bill before you, would alter West Virginia Code to include a clear statement that there is no requirement for clergy or religious groups to perform or host a marriage ceremony that does not conform to their sincerely held religious beliefs, and providing that they may not be penalized for this reason. Numerous other jurisdictions have followed the path proposed by this bill. Over 16 states have adopted some version of this legislation, and 2 have authorized similar clergy protective measures by executive order. These statutes were apparently intended to clarify that government expansion of marital rights did not impose a corresponding duty on clergy in opposition to their religious beliefs. This will provide a measure of clarity in the murky area of state power and marriage solemnization. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
Are there other members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman please yield?
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Thank you for your presentation and explanation of that bill. Because, on committee, it went through judiciary. I believe it went through one committee, and not a single member of the committee spoke in favor of the bill. So I appreciate you, speaking up and clearing up some things for that bill. But I do have a few questions. Do you know of any pastor, priest, rabbi, imam, any representative of a religious organization that performs marriage ceremonies? Have you ever heard of one being sued for not performing a ceremony based on their religious belief?
To the gentleman, I have not personally heard of one. I've had at least one ask me the question if he could be sued, but I'm not aware of any actual lawsuit.
What did you answer? What was your answer?
I said not likely, but it's unclear.
Not likely?
Not likely.
Okay, I believe you said in your presentation that commentators have theorized that it could happen. So this bill is based on theories put forth by commentators? Is that what you said?
No, it's based on the fact that there's no clarity in the law in this issue. And part of our jobs here is to provide clarity and predictability so that people can conform their conduct to whatever is expected of them.
But I know that you're familiar with the free exercise clause of the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Yes.
So a member of a religious organization cannot be compelled, especially something like performing a wedding ceremony, they cannot be compelled to do that. Is that correct?
I would think that people that are familiar with the First Amendment would reach that conclusion, but there's no clear case law and no clear statute in this state that reaches that conclusion. So it is possible, and I think you gave a perfect example of that during our committee meeting, that in the Jewish faith, if an Orthodox Jew seeks to marry a non-Jew, that's prohibited. An Orthodox rabbi would not perform that ceremony. Now, in your case, because you are familiar with the First Amendment, it's unlikely, at least in my mind, that you would seek to hold that person accountable in court. But that doesn't mean that every person would reach the same conclusion. Mm-hmm. So this would make it clear that in that case, there would be no cause of action if that rabbi refused to perform that ceremony and you challenged it in court.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. But you said there's no case law. Would that be because there's never been a lawsuit over it?
There's never been a lawsuit that reached the stage where our state Supreme Court has made that holding, yes.
Okay, so basically what this bill does, it reaffirms the First Amendment to protect clergy, representatives of a religious organization from a potential threat that hasn't happened. Is that what it does?
It clarifies that the First Amendment applies in that situation. As you know, the First Amendment doesn't go exactly that far. It simply says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It goes no further than that.
Okay, well, that's that clause from the First Amendment sounds pretty clear to me, but I appreciate you yielding and answering. At the appropriate time, I'd like to speak to the bill, please.
Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Speaker. All I can gather from this is that we're clarifying the First Amendment that has worked very well since we've had the Bill of Rights and protecting religious freedom in this country. There's no case law on this matter because no religious organization has ever been sued for not performing a wedding ceremony. If someone went to an attorney and said, they're refusing to marry me because of whatever reason, if it was a religious reason, that attorney would say, you have no suit because of the free exercise clause that works perfectly well in the First Amendment. So we're reaffirming the First Amendment to protect certain constituents from a perceived or a potential problem. We're reaffirming the First Amendment. I just want to get this straight. We're reaffirming the First Amendment to protect ourselves from a potential problem. Well, while we're at it, why don't we reaffirm the Third Amendment to protect from the potential problem of having to quarter British troops? It makes about as much sense if we're going to start reaffirming amendments that we already have that work perfectly well. It makes just about as much sense just to reaffirm the Third Amendment too. Now, I mean, I know I've been told by advocacy groups on both sides that don't worry, this bill does nothing. It doesn't really change anything, and I think it's quite true. The law is the same before you pass this bill and after you pass this bill. The bill really does nothing. And I just want to add, it does nothing to create jobs in West Virginia. It does nothing to fix or fully fund PEIA and take care of our state employees and public retirees. It does nothing to do that. It does nothing to increase workforce participation. It does nothing to address the drug epidemic in this state that's ravaging a generation of West Virginians. And it does nothing to slow the mass exodus of young people out of our state. And one might say that it might do something to speed up the mass exodus of young people out of the state. Because quite frankly, when we're up here debating bills that don't do anything, I think it makes us look bad. And honestly, I think the reason why we're doing it, I would have to guess that there's certain members who feel this need to...
Gentleman may stay his point.
We need to stick to the purpose of the bill, please, if you would, please.
To the gentleman, I do believe the gentleman's point is well taken in that you're certainly free to debate the merits of the bill, but would ask that you not speculate on people's motives as to why they would support or oppose the bill.
Well, thank you. I believe the gentleman stated we need to stick to the purpose of the bill, and I believe that the purpose of this bill is because some people perceive the need to pander to what they perceive as an intolerant element in their own base. And I like to give West Virginians a little more credit than that. I think we need to go out and talk to the people we represent. I don't think that they really feel the need to that. Nobody came to me with this problem. No pastor, priest, or rabbi, any member of a religious organization has ever come to me with this problem because the problem doesn't exist. So I'd like to give West Virginians a little bit more credit than this. And personally, to me, what we're doing today is participating in what I would call taxpayer-funded election activity. And I'm choosing not to participate, and I'm going to vote no. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John for the first, Douglas Tesla.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make sure that, I'm on record as a member of the judiciary that I support this bill. It is, in my opinion, a measure that's taken to codify the law of West Virginia that allows clergymen to act on behalf of the state to affirm a marriage. And I think, given the way things are going in the world these days, even though we haven't had this tested, the time that it's going to happen is not that far removed, possibly, and I think it's a good bill because it just basically states that the First Amendment, as the gentleman from the 37th said. So I am in support of this bill.
The lady from the 51st, Dr. Pleshire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm also voting no. But I would like to add another reason. We talk a lot about the First Amendment, and the First Amendment is very short. But the Section 15 of Article 3 of our West Virginia Constitution is very long. It says religious freedom guaranteed. That's the title, and I'm going to read it for you since a lot of people think there's some doubt or some murkiness. I think, and as some of you may know, I was chair of constitutional revision for 18 years, and my husband teaches the First Amendment. I think the law is crystal clear. The state, the federal government are not allowed to interfere in religious institution and when it comes to marriage. And here is the way our Constitution says, backwards and forwards, that this is already covered. No man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, nor shall any man be enforced, restrained, molested, or burthened in his body or goods, or otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or beliefs. So I would think that means you shouldn't be sued because your religious belief. But all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinions in matters of religion, and the same shall in no wise affect, diminish, or enlarge their civil capacities, and the legislature shall not prescribe any religious test whatsoever or confer any peculiar privileges or advantages on any sect or denomination, or pass any law requiring or authorizing any religious society or the people of any district within the state to levy on themselves or others any tax for the erection or the repair of any house of public worship, or for the support of any church or ministry, but it shall be left free for every person to select his religious instructor and to make for his support such private contracts as he shall please. So I think it is very clear. There has never been a case in the state of West Virginia, which is why there's no case law, that we are protected by both our state and our federal constitution. I don't think this is a good use of our time. I think we are pandering to groups who do not, some of whom do not believe in equal marriage, which is the law of the land, and for that reason, I'm voting no.
The gentleman from the 10th, Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would Chairman yield?
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, as I read what's above us here, I would say that this bill pertains mostly to individuals of the clergy. Would that be accurate?
Yes, it exclusively pertains to clergy of whatever religion.
How many other professions within the state are authorized to perform marriage ceremonies?
Only judges, as far as I know, to the gentleman.
But there are other options other than just clerk.
Certainly, yes.
And every county has some kind of a judge, I'm certain.
Every county has at least one circuit judge assigned to it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there are other options other than clergy to perform marriage ceremonies within the state of West Virginia.
Yes, that's true.
As I read the Constitution, and I'm not an authority as some are, but as I read the Constitution and I see the freedoms and take into the considerations, actually I believe a no vote would be a vote against the Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John from the 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman please yield, please?
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Just to clear up a few things, could you provide a list of examples of what would be some sincerely held religious beliefs that would prevent clergy from performing a marriage ceremony?
Well, I can give you a couple examples. I don't know if I can give you an exhaustive list, but I can give you a couple examples. For instance, in the Catholic Church, if a person that's Catholic wants to marry a non-Catholic, the priest would be within its rights to refuse unless the non-Catholic spouse agreed to have any children that were born of that marriage raised as Catholic Christians. So there could be an issue raised in that case if you were the Catholic person seeking to marry a non-Catholic and the priest refused. Depending on your acceptance of the breadth of the First Amendment, you could certainly challenge that in court, and then we would have a court ruling. But of course, in the meantime, the priest would end up having to acquire counsel through some fashion, whether hire it or seek some sort of a special interest group to defend him. Also, in the Islamic faith, a Muslim woman is forbidden for marrying a non-Muslim. So if you have a situation in which an imam refuses that marriage, once again, the person seeking that marriage would have the right to go to court, and under the theory that the imam had the license from the state to perform marriages, bring a suit and challenge that person in court, and once again that imam would have to have legal counsel to defend himself or herself. So those are a couple examples. I'm sure that's not exhaustive.
From your legal expertise, is there anything outside of a non-faith-based marriage that you think would fall under the scope of this law?
Well, I don't think it would apply to a civil ceremony in any way, if that's what you're asking me. If someone went before a court official and sought a marriage, obviously this bill does not protect. The court official would have to follow the law of the state and perform the marriage. Is that what you're asking? I'm not sure I followed your question.
Well, you said a Muslim faith married a non-Muslim and a Catholic married a non-Catholic. Anything outside of that, does something else, would this expand?
Well, in the Catholic Church, you've got issues with divorce, prior divorce, and you have to go through certain process to undo marriages that might have occurred prior to the marriage that you're seeking to have solemnized. So that's another situation. I can't speculate on all the issues, but when you deal with the ecclesiastical laws of each various faith have developed over centuries, and there are various situations that apply. I think in the Orthodox Church you have something called a get, that's sort of a certificate of divorce that you have to go through in order to then move forward with the marriage. I'm sure the gentleman from the 37th could fill in some additional gaps there, but there are various examples in each faith of issues that could arise that would justify the pastor, the priest, the rabbi, whoever is involved, from refusing to go forward with the ceremony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from the 29th, Delegate Moy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We've heard debate on both sides of this issue, and our Constitution seems to be clear. I have no doubt about that. But I introduced my pastor up here in the gallery a little bit earlier, and he and I have had a couple conversations with regard to this issue and concerns that he may have, and steps that our church and others have taken to help secure his freedom to make those choices. I see this as one more step to help my pastor and other pastors to be able to follow their religious convictions. I see no reason not to vote for this bill, and I will be supporting it.
John from the 20th, Delegate Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I also stand in support of this bill. What's the problem with giving additional protections to our pastors? There's no problem with it. No problem whatsoever. We have pastors who sometimes get concerned, And you know, when things are morally wrong and they want to choose to do what's right, they should be protected. So I'm going to stand, I'm going to vote for this bill, and I'm going to stand with my pastor. I believe he knows what's right. I listen to him every Sunday morning. I'm going to stand with him again on this issue. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for running this piece of legislation through your leadership team, and thank you everyone who's going to vote for it today, because I believe we're going to have an overwhelming vote today in support of a bill that's really going to add the protections that our pastors deserve and need.
John for the 60th, Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman please yield?
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Yes. Please help me, sir. I'm not an attorney. Is the term sincerely held, is that defined, or is it a whimsical idea?
I don't think it's either way. I think sincerely held religious beliefs have been litigated in court, and there are a series of legal decisions that provide guidance as to that. But each case is decided on its own facts and the application to that particular religious denomination.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Mr. Speaker, request permission to address the bill.
Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you. My friend, the gentleman from the 37th, stated there are no cases of wedding officiants suffering under the requirement to perform wedding ceremonies contrary to his conscience. Now, that is the martialized version. That's not a quote, but if I understand correctly, that's his general intent. When he said that, I did a quick Google search, clicked on the first thing that popped up. Idaho city ordinance tells pastors to marry gays or go to jail. So that was just the first one that popped up. So that's not actually an accurate statement. Now, in this state, I don't know. It's probably never happened. It has happened before, though, and it is something we need to be concerned about. That's point number one. It's interesting that my friends from the 37th and the 51st, who refer to the plain text of the Constitution, neglected to bring in the Second Amendment. That was interesting to me, and the inherent right to life protected under the Constitution of the United States of America. Let's discuss a little scenario here, if you don't mind. Let's say that my friend here, Delegate Miller, owns a business and she doesn't like short, loud guys. And I walk in and I want to purchase something from her and she says, "You're short and you're loud, get out." She has that right. It's her private business. It's not a government entity. So that moves us on to the next point. Next point is officiating weddings a government function? Of course it is. We all recognize that. But as my friend from Wood County brought up, there are other options. Do you have a right to compel someone to provide a service to you when they have a sincerely held belief that it's ineffective? Now, frankly, if I were to walk into her business and she said, "You're short and you're loud and I don't like you, get out," my response would be, "Yes, ma'am. I'm not here to cause problems. I'm sorry you have that problem. You're confused. You're going to miss out on my business and my pleasant personality." Well, my business anyway. And that's your loss, and I feel bad for you. Speaking as an ordained minister and a licensed officiant, which I am, I'm here to ask you to please protect my First Amendment rights to serve God as He leads me. Thank you.
John from 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you. Would the gentleman continue to, gentleman yield from the 60th?
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Yes, sir.
I just want to ask you a little bit about the case you brought up in Idaho.
Yes, sir.
Were they a for-profit business? Wedding chapel, for-profit business?
They are ordained ministers who provide wedding ceremonies.
Read the whole article.
I did.
Read it from several different.
Yeah, they have a chapel.
Which website are you reading it on, sir?
Washington Times.
Okay, Washington Times. Well, I read another article. It was because they were just to let you know, it was because they were a for-profit business. It was a for-profit wedding chapel.
Yes, sir. And I get paid when I provide wedding ceremonies. Thank you.
But not for profit.
John from 32nd, Delegate Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, the last time I checked, that the First Amendment is supposed to apply even for-profit businesses and individuals. We've heard a lot about the First Amendment. We've heard a lot about Article 3 of the West Virginia Constitution. Maybe there's not a case on record yet here in the state of West Virginia. But ask the cake baker, ask the photographer who refuses to perform part of a wedding function based upon sincerely held religious beliefs. Right now, there's a case pending in the United States Supreme Court on that very issue. Pastors are simply individuals, and they are also individuals who most likely are a part of a religious organization or religious sect. The First Amendment is supposed to apply to them as well, just like the cake baker, or just like the photographer, or just like a for-profit business or a for-profit business owner. And I will tell you that pastors in this state and any other state are one lawsuit away from facing liability on this issue. And so that is why we need a preemptive strike to pass this law. It makes sense. As the chairman stated, it does provide clarity. It provides pristine clarity. And that's why we need this law. Ladies and gentlemen, I would urge passage.
The other members desiring to speak to the passage of the bill before I recognize the gentleman from 27th to close. Gentleman from 27th wish to close? Gentleman from 27th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me just respond to a couple points that were raised. First of all, there's no requirement on us that we wait until somebody files a lawsuit to clarify the law. There's no such requirement. We can anticipate the need to clarify an issue and act proactively rather than reactively. And I think we can all envision a situation in this current environment where some special interest group, for whatever reason, decides to challenge the decision of a pastor, a rabbi, a priest, an imam, just for either the publicity, to make a point, to harass. Any number of motivations could exist to do that. And there are special interest groups out there that actually would take not only that side, you'd have special interest groups on the other side. But in the meantime, that pastor, that rabbi, that priest, that imam is drug into the middle of a lawsuit. This simply prevents that from happening. It clears that issue up, which is not addressed directly in our Constitution. And although I will agree with the gentlelady from the 51st, the West Virginia Constitution is more comprehensive. If you read that section, the word marriage does not appear anywhere in that section. So I think this is a proactive step that we can take as a responsible legislature to eliminate this risk hanging over our religious community. And I urge passage.
Question for the House is the passage of the bill. Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 90 ayes, 5 nays, 4 members absent not voting. Majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk, please report the title.
House Bill 4010.
Are there amendments to the title? Not the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk, please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Bills on second reading.
Committee Subsuper House Bill 2831 relating to the reconstitution of the Driver's Licensing Advisory Board.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee Subsuper House Bill 4006 revising the processes through which professional development is delivered to those who provide public education.
Are there amendments?
Delegates Gearhart, C. Miller, and Espinosa move to amend the bill. This is HFA Gearhart, C. Miller, and Espinosa 1-30, number 1.
John from the 66, Delegate Espinosa asks unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. John from the 66.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During our consideration of House Bill 4006 in both the House Education and the House Finance Committees, an issue of discussion was the issue of certification for advanced placement programs in West Virginia. Specifically, currently, the Center for Professional Development does provide, among the services that it does provide, certification of instructors to teach advanced placement. In both the House Education Committees and the House Finance Committees, we did hear assurances by the Department of Education that they do in fact intend to continue to offer this service, this support for our school districts and making sure that their advanced placement instructors are certified. However, the amendment that you have before you simply strengthens the bill to specifically state that the center shall provide this is a center that will reside within the Department of Education, shall provide statewide coordination for the continued growth and development of advanced placement programs in West Virginia high schools, including but not limited to serving as a liaison for the College Board Incorporated and providing for the training of advanced placement teachers. So again, I think this proposed amendment, which I joined with my colleagues from the 16th and the 27th in offering, I think it simply strengthens the pledge by the Department of Education that they will in fact provide this needed service. Mr. Speaker, I'd urge adoption of the amendment.
Are there other members desiring to speak to the adoption of the amendment? Gentleman from 36 Delegate Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the chairman would yield.
Yes.
Now, it's my understanding that we're on Amendment 1, and that is essentially the whole bill is Amendment 1, right? I mean, it covers the full 40, 50 pages.
No, that's not correct. I believe the amendment, the other amendment you're seeing was the amendment that House Finance, I believe, took up. It was an education amendment, but then House Finance, of course, we considered a committee substitute, which included that big amendment that you see there that we actually adopted in education. So that large amendment is not before us. What is before us is this amendment, et al. 130, number 1, that is a proposed amendment to the committee substitute that we approved in House Finance.
I see. So all we have is the limited amendment before us now. We don't have the full bill.
We are amending the committee substitute that was approved in House Finance, but we have just the limited amendment. Again, this is HFA Gearhart, C. Miller, and Espinosa 1-30, number 1, that deals, I think, exclusively with this issue of advanced placement.
Okay, now and so we're not even going to take up HED amend number 1, which is on the...
We are not.
All right, we won't take that. I understand now. Now, this is the bill that would eliminate the Education and Arts Secretary, correct?
Among other things, and again, as we discussed in education, the primary focus of this bill is really to empower our local school districts to make decisions closer to the classroom with regard to how professional development is delivered. As part of that legislation, it does move the Center for Professional Development over to the Department of Education, and hence the purpose of this amendment is really just to strengthen the department's commitment to ensuring that our advanced placement instructors do have this certification. It does, the underlying bill does in fact eliminate the Department of Education and the Arts, which as we've discussed on both education and finance, is really in keeping or is consistent with the education efficiency audit, which really called into question if we do in fact move over the Center for Professional Development, there certainly can be efficiencies achieved by eliminating the Department of Education and Arts, just the bureaucracy associated with that, moving the surviving entities to other departments.
So there's really two different parts of the bill. One relates to reorganizing the executive and agencies, and the other relates to what this amendment's on concerning professional development, correct?
I'm sorry, could you restate that?
Yes. The bill as a whole, what we're amending, that bill would provide for, in effect, two different things. One is the professional development that you're talking about in this particular amendment, and also reorganizing the executive. Now, this is that bill, correct?
This is House Bill 4006. This is an amendment. I guess where we would differ, and I know we've had discussions about this in both education, I believe in House Finance, I would submit that they are very much related, and I think that both of those actions, moving the Center for Professional Development under the Department of Education and eliminating and making more efficient our education delivery system here in West Virginia, I think they are consistent with the one purpose of this bill.
Now, you said that the bill had gone to education and then finance. It did not go to government organizations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. And let's see. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
The gentleman from 29th, take it more.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman continue to yield?
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, our distinguished education chair. As I recall, in committee, in education, and you and I both are on finance, we had lengthy discussion of the other programs that were performed. And this amendment does not address any of those other programs that that the Education and Arts does. The governor's programs, the excuse me, Energy Express, and those. This amendment does not address those at all, correct?
You are correct, and again, as I shared when describing the amendment, it really deals. You'll recall that the bills that left education and also left to finance does call for a Center for Professional Development to be within the Department of Education. So this really deals, with a fairly narrow aspect of House Bill 4006. That Center for Professional Development that the department has committed to maintaining, and this amendment would just ensure or just codify the fact that the department shall provide that support for advanced placement certification as part of that center development. Some of the other programs you referenced, you'll recall the department did commit to carrying out or continuing to offer each of those programs, but not as part of the Center for Professional Development. So this is a fairly narrow amendment, really dealing with the responsibilities of that Center for Professional Development in the Department of Education.
Yes, sir, I believe that your recollection is correct, but there was considerable concern about the other programs, and we were told verbally just that they would continue. Do you not think for us to have a commitment for those programs to continue, they should have been included in this amendment?
Well, as I suspect you're aware, those programs that I believe you're referencing, like the Governor's School, Energy Express, those programs are not listed in code anywhere today. As we stand today, nowhere in code are those referenced. The only place you'll find them is in the budget. And they've been in the budget the last some years. They're in the proposed budget that's been presented to us by the governor. All indications based on, I think, our deliberations in finance are that each of those line items will continue to be in the budget. So they're not in the code today specifying that the Department of Education and the Arts or any other agency carry those out today. However, the fact that they're funded in the budget, to the extent that we continue to fund them in the budget, and I sense broad bipartisan support for including funding for Energy Express, the Governor's School, and those other programs that are listed under the Department of Education and Arts, I believe, I'm very confident that as long as this legislature funds those items in the budget, they will continue to be carried out. And as you noted, the Department of Education has pledged to, on behalf of the governor, who really decides where those programs are administered, the department has indicated that they will take on those programs.
Would you agree with me that if those programs had been listed in this amendment, it would further bolster the fact that we are committed to continuing those programs?
Well, again, I would say that this amendment really deals with the Center for Professional Development. I appreciate the fact that you're suggesting that they might be considered or included in the bill, elsewhere, but that certainly is an amendment that could have been considered in House Education. It could have been considered in House Finance. This amendment simply deals with the Center for Professional Development, and just underscoring that as part of the duties of the Center for Professional Development, that these, that the advanced placement certification.
Point of order has been made.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Stays point. Gentleman from 63rd.
Mr. Speaker, with all due respect, we're talking about an amendment, not what could have, would have, and should have been done in other committees. And I think we need to stick to questions on this specific amendment.
I've tried to allow a little bit of leeway here, but we are going into the merits of the bill itself, which we'll certainly have the opportunity to debate. I would ask that any discussion and questions or comments relate to the amendment that's before us. Does the gentleman from 66 wish to complete?
No.
That's okay.
I have further questions, Mr. Speaker, if I may.
Gentleman may proceed.
As I read this amendment, it's the leading language that has to do with not requiring any specific funding by the legislature. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
Can you explain the rationale for that being deleted?
The Constitution, as I believe we discussed in finance, the Constitution is very clear. The only way monies can be appropriated for these or any other programs is through the budget or through a supplementary appropriation. So really that language would have been duplicative of what's in the Constitution.
Thank you, my esteemed chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from 35th, Doug Nelson.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the chair of the Committee of Second Reference, I stand up and urge adoption of the amendment.
John from 37th, Doug Pushkin.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Chair of Education please yield?
Gentleman yields.
Yes.
I'm a bit confused. I'm looking at the amendment. It's a rather short amendment. Am I looking at the right one?
It is. The amendment's okay.
This, if you're looking at Gearhart, Miller, Espinosa 1-30, number 1, it is a relatively short amendment, yes.
Okay. But you said what the amendment does, that it moves the Center for Professional Development under the Department of Education. Is that what you said?
No.
Okay. Because it doesn't do that, does it?
No.
Okay. So
that is accomplished.
What's that?
That is accomplished by House Bill 4006. What this amendment speaks to is that center, which is moved to the Department of Education. I'm sorry, to the. You
just said that it didn't move the center.
This amendment doesn't do so. The underlying bill does. House Bill 4006 does call upon the Department of Education to have a center for professional development. This amendment simply requires that center, which is spelled out in the underlying bill, that center will provide this support for advanced placement certification.
Okay. And that is a function of the Center for Professional Development, right? Advanced certification. That's one of the things they do. Right.
The existing Center for Professional Development?
The existing one that's not correct. Being moved. It calls for the Department of Education to perform their duties, but it's not moving that particular office on Hale Street that operates quite efficiently and trains the entire state with 12 people, with a 12-member staff. They're not being moved. They're being eliminated. Is that correct?
No, it requires the Department of Education to have a Center for Professional Development.
A center, but not the one that we have now with the 12 people who work
That is
there.
correct.
Okay, but what about, so the duties of that about the advanced placement training, what about national board certification? Is that in the rest of the bill?
This amendment does not deal with that issue.
Does the rest of the bill? I guess we'll talk about that tomorrow.
I think we've been admonished to try to stick to this amendment, so I'm going to do my best to do so.
Well, we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks.
Further members desiring to speak to the adoption of the amendment. Does the gentleman from 66 wish to close debate on the adoption of the amendment? If not, the question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor of adoption will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? Gentleman from 36, Doug Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, I rise to move we postpone indefinitely House Bill 4006.
The gentleman from 36 moves that that we postpone indefinitely consideration of House Bill 4006. Are there other members desiring to speak to the gentleman's motion? Gentleman from the 15th, Doug Foster.
Thank you. I would urge the body that this bill is before us to consider it on second reading and on third reading. That's what we have second reading and third reading for, so we can take up amendments as we just did, and then also on third reading for the discussion of the merits of the bill. And I suggest that it's before us in that fashion, and we should let it move forward as such, and urge a red vote on this motion.
John from 66, Delegate Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join the Assistant Majority Leader in urging rejection of this motion. To my colleagues, this legislation, House Bill 4006, essentially an identical bill to what passed this body last year. It was House Bill 2524 by a considerable margin. I believe that particular bill passed with 60 votes of the legislature. Again, this has been fully discussed in both House Education and Finance. See really no reason to postpone consideration of this bill. I'd urge rejection of the motion.
Other members desiring to speak to the adoption of the motion before I recognize the gentleman from 36, Delegate Robinson, to close debate on the motion. Gentleman from 36.
Will the Education Chair yield?
Gentleman yield.
Yes.
Chairman, this is the bill where we're trying to fire Gail Manchin for political reasons, correct?
No, absolutely.
The gentleman, again, I've been trying to give very good leeway in this bill, but we're not going to get into personal attacks or motivation about a bill. The language of the bill is before us on second reading and on amendment stage, and your motion is to postpone that bill indefinitely. I do not believe it's appropriate for you to cast aspersions on people's motives in this body, or to even question those motives at this point in terms of the motives. The question before this House is the motion that you've made to postpone this bill indefinitely, and I'd ask you to keep your comments and questions to that motion.
Then you yield.
The gentleman does not yield.
I've stood before this body before and talked about priorities. Well, just like all of you, I'm receiving hundreds of emails every single day on PEIA. We've yet to introduce a PEIA fix bill in any committee. What I would like to happen today is we postpone this bill and get to our priorities. We passed a bill to kill the film tax credit in, 10, 12 days? But we're continuing to get contacted. We have teachers ready to walk out of the schools. They're going to leave the schools and be striking.
Well, gentlemen, I would ask you keep your comments to the motion before us rather than other pieces of legislation or proposed legislation that might be brought before this body.
I would suggest the body readdress its priorities and we postpone this bill today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John 50th has requested a roll call. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. Question before the House is the motion by the gentleman. For what purpose, the gentleman from 63rd seek recognition? The gentleman has closed debate.
Just a point of clarification. If we want to continue with this bill, we need to vote in the red, right?
The gentleman is correct to continue debate on the bill. The effect of the gentleman's motion, if adopted, would be to postpone indefinitely. The further consideration of the bill would not be further considered. So the gentleman is correct. Question before the House is the motion by the gentleman from 36 to postpone indefinitely consideration of committee substitute for House Bill 4006. Those in favor of the gentleman's motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. The next question, 33 ayes, 62 nays, 4 members absent, not voting. Less than the majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the motion rejected. Are there further amendments to committee substitute for HB 4006? Not, the bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 3020 relating to criminal penalties for the offenses of hunting, trapping, or fishing on the lands of another person.
Bill be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4233 relating generally to fraudulent transfers.
Bill be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4242 clarifying the jurisdictional amount for removal of a civil action from magistrate court to circuit court.
Bill be advanced. Leaves of absence. Gentleman from the 15th.
For our colleagues Capito, Coles, Eisner, and Longstreth.
Without objection, leaves will be granted. Remarks by members of the House. The gentleman from the 51st, Delegate Statler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On your desk, there is an envelope that I've had placed there from the ladies and gentlemen from Montague County here today. I will tell you, in that envelope will be a meal ticket that will be served to you, and these meals are prepared by PACE, which is a sheltered workshop in Montague County, and they also have buildings in Marion and Kanawha, so they're pretty much statewide sheltered workshop that's working. I will say to you that we'll go out and redeem that ticket because this will be the best meal that you will receive this year down here at the session. And I'll also say to you that these ladies and gentlemen has been up all night preparing these meals and getting them ready to come down to you. So, Mr. Speaker, I encourage everyone to redeem their ticket out at the Rotunda.
Lady from 38, Delegate Graves.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from the 22nd's remarks yesterday concerning his concern over his constituents' struggle to pay their bills would be printed to the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, remarks be printed to the appendix of the journal. Gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure you all read the paper this morning where Charles Gazette is in bankruptcy. Well, Mr. Speaker, that's bittersweet to me. It's bitter because a liberal Gazette was always, if I want to read an editorial to see where I stand, I would read the Gazette and then I would vote the other way. And Mr. Speaker, I've had an opportunity to talk to the Gazette at Chilton, and I told her to her face one time, every day you get up and you read how bad the legislature is. And I said, how could we feel good about ourselves when every day we read in the paper how bad we are? And Arch Moore called it a sick mail, the morning sick call. And so the Gazette always endorsed the liberal candidates, which is out of tune with this legislature. And so I didn't agree with them, but let me end on a good note. I think Gazette, news-wise, is the best paper next to my Parkersburg News in the state. So that's the sweet side of it. Now, as I read it, the people who have made the high bid on the Gazette are the Ogden chain, which is part of the Parkersburg News, Martinsburg, Elkins papers, and I guarantee you, delegates from in Wheeling, delegates in this body will find a lot more positive news on the legislature than they have in the past. So I'm, like I said, bittersweet about them going bankrupt, but I won't be sorry to read their liberal views in the paper any longer. Thank you.
John from the 10th, Delegate Chris.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like the remarks of my fellow delegate from the 10th to be recorded in the journal.
In the
appendix to the journal.
John, without objection, gentleman's remarks will be printed in the appendix of the journal. John from the 14th, Delegate Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the remarks on HB 4010, the gentleman from the 32nd, be entered in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, gentleman's remarks will be printed in the appendix of the journal. John from the 50th, Delegate Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same request for the gentleman from the 37th and the gentle lady from the 51st on House Bill 4010. And I'd also like to ask that the remarks by the gentleman from the 60th about the short, loud guys never be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection on both counts. The certain remarks will be printed and certain remarks will not. Gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a phone call last night from a teacher, and you know, we had a long conversation about what has coincided with PEA and what and how we can fix it. Well, when they come to me and talk to me and my political party gets brought up, and everybody in this chamber knows that I'm very bipartisan in how I do my business for my district. I represent my people 100% and nobody else. It's my people, not organizations, not parties, not anything like that. But what we have to do is that we have to tell these people the truth. We cannot lie to them no more. And by lying to them, the number one thing with the healthcare costs in America, in our state, has been brought to us not by what this chamber has done, but what the federal government has done. And I think we need to point that out to people. You know, with the Affordable Health Care Act, existing people that had these health cares, had health care, what happened? It went up. It went up extremely. And I know the gentleman from the 22nd that I served with, we have tried to find ways to make bills to help fund this and to help get this done. But I think that we need to tell the whole story, and like the gentleman across the aisle here, the buck stops here. I can agree with that. But I also think that we, like I said, tell these teachers the truth and quit lying to them. Thank you.
John from 16th, Delegate Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was some truth to that from my esteemed colleague from the 22nd with the Affordable Care Act. But you also know, speaking from an advisor standpoint with money, that on the new tax reform bill, when you take out the mandate, that increased the premiums as well, if we're going to be fair and tell the truth. Also, to fix PEIA, you have to either dedicate a revenue stream to it or create one. Because long before Affordable Care Act or anything like that, healthcare is a continuous rise in our society. So to offset, again, you have to have appropriated dollars to that, and that is the truth. Thank you.
From the 27th, Delegate Gerhardt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask that the remarks from the gentleman from Lincoln County be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, remarks be printed in the appendix of the journal. Gentleman from the 20th, Delegate Markham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I call to the attention of this body House Bill 4341. There is a bill pending that will be a permanent fix to PEIA. It will dedicate the money needed to fully fund PEIA. And I encourage the majority in this body and the leadership team in this body, put the bill on the agenda. You know, the buck stops here. If we want to fix PEIA, let's show the people and let's run the bill. We talk all the time of what we're going to do, what we're going to do. Well, now it's time to do it. Run the bill. House Bill 4341 will fully fund PEIA by dedicating a certain portion of the gas severance tax to fully fund PEIA. So if you stand with teachers, if you stand with state workers, if you stand with correctional officers, if you stand with any person that works for the state of West Virginia that draws PEIA, support the bill. Put it on the agenda. Show the people that you're serious about fixing PEIA and run House Bill 4341. You know, there's a lot of talk that comes out of this chamber about what we're going to do. A lot of floor speeches given, a lot of political talks being made. Well, right here's the bill that we can do to fix the issue. So I encourage you, Mr. Speaker, and the leadership in this House, put House Bill 4341 on the agenda. Be bold and run what's important. Stand up and do what's right. Run the bill. Let's get our priorities straight. You know, getting rid of the film tax credit before we fix PEIA is not proper priorities. That we don't have our priorities in line when we do that. You know, and if these teachers walk out and they decide to strike, I want you to know it's on the people that don't put this bill on the agenda. When the strike happens, it's on the people that don't run the bills to fix PEIA. So again, Mr. Speaker, I encourage you and your leadership team, take a close look at House Bill 4341 and let's permanently fix PEIA. We told you last year it was going to happen. This year it smacked us in the face, and let's do it. Do what's right. Stand up for your state workers and your teachers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John for 39, Doug Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that priority on PI is important, but the real priority has to be this. Years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, a bill was passed by the then majority that required the employees to pay 20% of the premium, and that the state would pay 80% of the premium. So we could pass that bill, and that could be a priority, but nothing until we repeal that would stop the employee from having to pay 20% of the cost. Thank you very much.
John from the 64th, Doggett Householder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm interested in solutions and not grandstanding. We just heard from the gentleman from the 20th that 4341 is a cure-all to fix PEIA, and that simply is not the truth. Just last week, we saw another political grandstanding. They wanted to abolish the PEIA Finance Board. So all we've heard for solutions so far is to create instability. And now today we're talking about House Bill 4341, which creates volatility. To tie it to the natural gas prices, with natural gas prices rising and lowering, is a terrible idea. I would expect, if the gentleman really truly understands, as what the gentleman from Kanawha just mentioned, we have an 80-20 mandate. So let's just assume that our natural gas industry is taking off. Okay, let's just say it's booming and everything's going very well. Under this bill, 4341, for every additional dollar that we put in, the recipient would have to put in 25 cents. Okay? So now this bill, 4341, will require PEIA recipients to put in more money. How does that benefit them? That doesn't help them. That's not a solution. Actually, it makes them poorer. Ladies and gentlemen, 4341 is not the solution, and I'm sorry. We do have PEIA fully funded in the budget bill this year that was presented by the governor.
John from 22nd, Doggett Eldridge.
I ask unanimous consent from remarks from delegate from Cabell County 16 be printed in appendix to the journal.
Without objection, remarks be printed in the appendix to the journal. Further remarks. John from 35th, Doggett Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we've all received numerous emails and responded to those. I'm no different than anybody else, and we're listening and we hear this loud and clear. I want to assure the body and the public that's listening or looking on that we have this front and center day in and day out, and that's part of our budget process with these agencies. Our big bill, it is the budget bill, and we'll have this in the budget. We're looking at all options. We've talked with the governor, the Senate. We heard a lot of screams about the Go 365. Well, look what happened last night. The governor took action on that. So this can be done and worked as we move through our days here at this body, okay? That's just one example, and there will be more to come. So PEIA, we spend $700 million on our insurance. $700 million. 36,000 state employees. Almost 250,000 bodies are covered by PEIA. So what are our challenges? The gentleman from Kanawha mentioned our 80-20. That was put in place in the early 2000s so that any dollar that we put in, it requires a match by the employee. I'm still wondering what fully funded means when that's stated, but we are looking at all options. We're faced with rising health care costs across the board, whether it's the public or private sectors. We're all faced with that. And then when it comes to our teacher pay raises or things like that, let's not forget that we have an unfunded retirement liability that we have been putting over $300 million into a year. And we've gone, thanks to the good efforts of the body some 15, 20 years ago, we've gone from an unfunded retirement liability of 9% or in the single digits up to almost 70%. And if that commitment had not been made years ago, just think of extra dollars that would be there for a potential pay raise. And we are going to look at this pay raise. We owe that to our employees, but we owe it as we look at the whole budget and the priority of what our spends are. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John from 32nd, Delegate Love.
I'll tell you a little story. I don't know how PEIA affects the rest of this body, but myself, I was in the state senate for 15 years. I was appointed in 1993, and in 2010, I had a heart blockage, so I had to have a 10-way bypass, and I didn't run until this past year when I was elected to this illustrious body. But when I was in the Senate, I grossed $15,000 a year. Whether you know it or not, being a legislator, you're not considered a state employee. Back in 1976, when PEIA was created, they charged a legislator could participate in PEIA, and the premium was $15 per month. Well, that has escalated now, and I pay the full premium to $800 per month. And I grossed $15,000 then, and I netted, after taxes, Social Security, everything that goes with it, I netted $97. So for about 10 to 15 years, I came to the body over there and worked for around $100 a year, which was not too much to take home. Now the pay is a little bit more. My premium is still in the vicinity of $800 per month, and that's about $10,000 a year, so you can deduct that from the $20,000. But in the meantime, I was happy to have insurance because I had a 10-way bypass, and that's a lot of bypass. But the bill on it was something like $200,000, so I was thankful that I had the opportunity to have insurance, which was PEIA. So I can't complain about not making any money as a legislator because that $210,000 was paid by PEIA, and even the 20%, I don't remember what that was. I paid a little bit, but it wasn't enough to make me go into bankruptcy, nevertheless. But be thankful that you're not in the shape that I am. That I had a fellow sitting beside of me. His wife drove a bus, and he had PEIA insurance through her. He got the same benefits as I did, paying $800 a month. The Senate president, his wife was president of the college down south. He had the same PEIA coverage as I did, and he paid whatever the premium was, or she paid whatever the premium was, but he got the benefit of it. So I thought I'd tell you that little story, that whether you know it or not, you're not a state employee, but your retirement is based on $40,000 a year. And how they figure you're not a state employee, I don't know. But when I go home on weekends, this year and the past years, I had something to do for the legislature through this body by telephone. I had to attend meetings during the week and the weekends, and I'm sure that you had that same experience. It cost me a lot of money for gasoline. It cost me money for meals, and I had to pay that out of my own pocket. But sometimes being a legislator is not as illustrious as a lot of people think. And in my case, it hasn't been. But again, I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to buy that PEIA insurance because it sure comes in handy if you have a heart bypass. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John from the 67th, Delegate Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I'd like to ask for the gentleman's comments from the 35th be included in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection, remarks be printed in the appendix.
And, Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to reaffirm the gentleman's comments from the 22nd in terms of trying to come at this from a collaborative and bipartisan manner. And because we're pushing up against forces that are certainly out of our control. And he was trying to certainly clear the air and say, look, these are rising health care costs. This is a systemic issue in this country that we're up against. This isn't just a West Virginia thing. And it is true. Look, the individual mandate alone was costing this country $380 billion, with a B, billion dollars a year, which should tell you how much insurance is costing in this country. Now, unfortunately, the point I think was made that somehow that's caused healthcare costs to rise, and that's just untrue. The individual mandate being repealed, that's not a part of rising healthcare costs. We've seen that. That was more of a, not sure if it was purposeful or not, but the side effect of incentivizing and prioritizing coverage over healthcare costs. That was Obamacare. That's what we're all living in now. We're all past that, and this is just the environment that we're going to have to operate in. But I would, to the gentleman's comments from the 22nd, let's come at this from a collaborative manner. This is a trend that none of us are going to be able to change here in this chamber, but healthcare costs are going to continue to rise. It's going to be something that we have to tackle. But let's look at this with clear eyes and say what's true, and what is true is healthcare costs have been increasing ever since Obamacare has come into law, and that is not going to change, and we need to plan for that in the future. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further remarks by members? Miscellaneous business. Gentleman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Subject to announcements, I move the House adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Other announcements. Gentleman from 33rd, Delegate Hanshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two announcements. First, the Republican members of the House will have a caucus in this chamber in 10 minutes, 1:15. And secondly, the Committee on Judiciary will meet tomorrow morning upstairs at 9 a.m. We'll post the agenda for that meeting later today. Thanks.
John from 64th, Delegate Householder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on Finance will meet tomorrow, January 31st at 9 a.m. for an informational hearing on House Joint Resolution 106, Just Cut Taxes and Win, followed by a budget hearing by the State Auditor.
John from the 51st, Delegate Stadler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet Wednesday at 2 p.m. in the Education Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
John from the 48th, Delegate Hamrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee on Government Organization will meet tomorrow at 9 a.m. in the House Government Organization Committee Room 215E. The agenda is posted.
The lady from the 49th, Delegate Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet today at 2 o'clock in room 215E, but the caucus of the Republican members prior to that at 1:30 has been canceled.
John from the 10th, Delegate Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet today at 2 o'clock in Judiciary Committee Room.
The lady from the 32nd, Delegate Kassinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on the Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will not be meeting today, but we will be meeting on Thursday, and our work groups need to be prepared to present what we've come up with to our committee on Thursday.
Lady from the 59th, Delegate Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Political Subdivisions will meet today at 2 in Education. The agenda has been posted.
John from the 62nd, Delegate Overton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Subcommittee on Redistricting, House Bill 2383, will be meeting tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. in Judiciary.
John from 28th, Delegate Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security will not meet tomorrow, Wednesday, but will meet the following Wednesday. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
John from 39th, Delegate Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to remind the members of pension and retirement that we will meet today at 4 o'clock in the House Finance Room. Thank you very much. The agenda has been posted.
John for the 50th, Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic members of this body will caucus immediately upon adjournment in House Gov Org. Immediately upon adjournment, House Gov Org.
Further announcements. Not the question for the House is the motion by the gentleman for the 15th that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. All in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the House adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. With those on the floor and our guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by the Reverend Junius Lewis of the Central United Methodist Church and Trinity United Methodist Church in Fairmont, West Virginia. And then please remain standing as we are led in the pledge this morning by the Senator from Wetzel, Reverend Lewis.
Would you bow your heads with me? Gracious and eternal God, we thank you because this is the day that you have given us, and we in turn give it back to you. And we pray, oh God, that as we start this session today, that you would grace us with your wisdom, that you would grace us, oh God, with understanding so that your elected officials would know how to serve their constituents. We pray, oh God, that you would bless your people with understanding that we may serve you by serving one another. And we ask, oh God, that you provide the answers to all of the problems that face this great state. For we know that with your help, with your direction and your guidance, this state will be a beacon of hope, light, and life for the entire nation to see. And we give you praise for your blessing, for your help, and your mercy. And we ask that you would pour out your grace today through the name of the Savior, Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Lewis. The Senator from Wetzel.
Will those in the chamber and our guests in the gallery please join me in reciting the pledge to the great nation of our fatherland? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, Monday, January 29th, 2018.
The Senator from Mercer requests unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Introduction of guests. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the days. Please stand and be recognized as your name is called. As guest of the Senator from Tucker, we have Haley Jade Poling and Isaiah Fry. As guest of the Senator from Preston, we have Kendra Stemple and Lydia Phillips. And as guest is the Senator from Kanawha, the Senior Senator from the 8th, we have William Walker. Would they all please rise and the Senate give them a warm welcome? Further introductions. The Senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senators from the 15th District and the senior senator of the 16th District, I would like to welcome a group of 8th graders from Berkeley County who are seated in the East Gallery. They're chaperoned by Justin Mock and Catherine Hinson. Would the Senate please make them feel welcome?
The Senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senator from Tucker and myself, we'd like to welcome the chaperones of our honorary pages today, Lydia and Kendra, their mother, Jennifer Phillips, and chaperones Michael and Kim Stemple. If they're in the gallery, please stand and be recognized, and Senate make them welcome.
The senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Logan, we're very pleased to have in the South Gallery to my left members of the Boone County Association of Retired School Employees. Seated up there is Tom Bice and good friend Gary Bell. If they would stand, the Senate make them welcome.
The senator from Braxton County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of myself and the junior senator from Harrison County, we've got some friends from Harrison County, retired teachers with the AARP, Bob and Nellie Osborne of Harrison County, Bill Reed and Chuck Hammond, also of Harrison County. If they'd please stand and the body make them welcome.
The senator from Logan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my senior senator from Boone County, we have students from West Chapmanville Grade School here today. They're visiting the state auditor's office, so if everyone could please give them a warm welcome.
The senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last but not least, right? Mr. President, it's my pleasure and that of my senior senator from Braxton, and your pleasure, sir, to introduce some folks in the audience today that are very near and dear to my heart. As you all know, my mother was a retired teacher, and there's 4 great retired teachers up in our audience today that a lot of people owe a lot of thanks to. And if they would stand and be recognized, Liz Bradford, Barbara Zirkle, Clara Maid Spray, and Debbie Walker. Please give them a nice welcome. They're over here on the left.
The senator from Monongalia.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senior senator from Marion County and myself, we have some very special guests with us down from Monongalia County today. Good friends of mine, and I've come to know them over the last few years very well. They represent their staff and members of the senior Monongalians in Morgantown. If they'll please stand and let the Senate make them welcome.
The senator from Pleasance County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the gallery to my right, we have a couple guests from Pleasance County. Charmel Radcliffe, who is the regional director of the retirees, and her husband, Mark. Would they please stand? Be welcome.
The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's your pleasure and mine, and on behalf of the senator from Tucker County and myself, we'd like to recognize and make welcome in the North Gallery members of the West Virginia Association of Retired School Employees from Taylor County, Mary Jane Hall, Mary Slayton, Carolyn Harrison, John Harrison, Curtis Hildebrand, and John Taylor. If you please stand and the Senate make them welcome.
The senior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pleased to have Will Walker here today as a Page student at George Washington High School. On behalf of the junior senator from the 8th, the 2 senators from the 17th, I'd also like to welcome his grandfather, Bill Milam, who's seated in the gallery to my rear, no stranger to the Senate. Please make Mr. Milam welcome.
Further introductions. The senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Preston County and myself, we want to welcome the chaperones for Haley and Isaiah today. In the gallery behind us, Haley's mom, Misty Shula, is with us, and Isaiah's dad, John Fry, is with us. If they would stand and the members make them welcome.
Further introductions? Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2546, allowing replacement costs of employer-provided property to be deducted from an employee's final paycheck if the property is not returned.
Communication will be received and referred to the Committee on Workforce.
Engrossed House Bill 4183, relating generally to standardized testing requirements for non-public schools.
The communication will be received and referred to the Committee on Education. Further communications from the House?
No, sir.
Communications from the Executive?
Excuse me. No, sir.
Reports from standing committees.
Now your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 258, exempting honorably discharged veterans from fees for license to carry deadly weapons, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute for committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration committee substitute for Senate Bill 268, eliminating requirement that certain agencies purchase commodities produced on institutional farms. Senate Bill 324, removing restrictions where certain traditional lottery games may be played. And Senate Bill 357, relating generally to limited video lottery. And reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Craig Blair, Chair.
The reports will be received.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 345, authorizing DNR established procedures and fee schedule for limited permit hunts, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 346, permitting full-time non-resident students purchase lifetime resident hunting, trapping, and fishing licenses, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the bill's original double committee reference will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 348, allowing for disposal of surface weapons of special DNR police officers, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. Respectfully submitted, Mark R. Maynard, Chair.
Report will be received, and under the bill's original double committee reference will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 350, eliminating obsolete requirement that Lottery Commission file racetrack video lottery game rules with Secretary of State, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 386, decreasing and increasing appropriations from Treasury to Higher Education Policy Commission, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Craig Blair, Chair.
Report will be received.
That's all I have, sir.
Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Requesting unanimous consent that Senate Bill number 416 through Senate Bill number 429 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
The senator from Ohio County requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill number 416 through Senate Bill number 429 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 11 by Senators Rucker and Unger, naming the Evans Center for Excellence in Aircraft Maintenance.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 20 by Senators Beach, Prezioso, Stallings, Facemeyer, Unger, and Plymel, celebrating the achievements and contributions of Monongalia County.
The senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
The senator from Monongalia County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and that the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 20, celebrating the achievements and contributions of Monongalia County and its citizens to the great state of West Virginia.
The question before the Senate is adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? The senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, as the clerk has stated, today is the day that we honor my favorite county, that being Montague County. And I have done this resolution every year since I've been here, and believe it or not, it gets longer and longer each year. So I'm not going to go and read everything that's on here because we'd be wasting some time here this morning, and I know we have other things to get to. But let me paint a picture for you if I can. Montague County established its authority in 1776 along the banks of the Monongahela River. But to add a few other things, that imagine yourself if you could live in a community where you've received recognition as the best performing small metro area, top college destination, smart places to live, best quality of life and knowledge of worker metros, most secure city, best small town to live in. This was the Men's Journal. Best sports city. And over the time that I have been in the Senate, they've accomplished a lot more. And here just recently, they received the Patty Hamilton Image Award in Montague County. We are a land-grant institution founded in 1867. And my favorite, and I've worked with many of the folks here that you see standing at the back of the room, and so has the senator from Marion County, is the award-winning baseball park, which has become an anchor in a lot of ways for Morgantown and what's relocating to, or locating to Morgantown as far as economic development goes. Morgantown's a wonderful place. We also have festivals that are recognized nationally in regards to the Mountain Fest, the University Arts Series, Cooper's Rocks, and the trail system we have there, and the list goes on and on. But it is my pleasure to welcome these folks standing at the back of the room, and I welcome them to the front of the room here in just moments to have a photo. But if we would just take a moment to recognize these folks, I know they greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
The senator from Marion County. The senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the remarks by the senator from Montague be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection. So ordered. Further remarks? Discussion? The senator from Wetzel County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Echoing what my colleague from Monongalia County said, I'm proud to represent part of Marion County, and every time I go over there, I say, man, if I have to move, this is where I'm going. It's a wonderful community. The people work together, and I believe Forbes magazine said you're a recession-proof city. And I think that is a wonderful remark to make about any community, but it's the hard work of the people of Monongalia County that have put you where you are today, and I salute you very much. Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Requesting unanimous consent, the remarks by the senator from Wetzel will be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting a resolution.
Senator from Ohio County moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Further resolutions?
Yes, sir. Senate Resolution 21 by Senators Beach, Stallings, Facemeyer, Prezioso, and Plymel, recognizing Brian Sherman for being named the 2017 West Virginia Outstanding Earth Science Teacher.
The Senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Senator from Monongalia County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and that the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 21, recognizing Brian Sherman for being named the 2017 Outstanding Earth Science Teacher for the state of West Virginia.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? The Senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senators from North Central West Virginia, we have a familiar face with us here today, recognizing Brian Schumer, who used to be a regular face on WDDV Channel 5 in Morgantown or in Clarksburg for many years. We're recognizing him today, ladies and gentlemen, as the National Association of Geoscience Teachers Award for Outstanding Earth Science Teacher of the state of West Virginia. Brian has been with us here in the state of West Virginia for many years. Brian and I also share the same birth date. I don't think he knew that, but I'll share that with everyone, although I think Brian might have a couple years on me. I'm not sure. But Brian, again, has been a familiar face for many of us in North Central West Virginia. We're glad that he's here. We're glad that he's been recognized in this manner. It's a very high honor to be doing this and to be recognized in your field of choice. Most of us go through our life in our field of choice not to be recognized, and you have, sir. And we're very grateful that you're here with us today, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion? The Senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the remarks by the Senator from Monongalia be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the resolution adopted. The Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess to present the resolution.
Senator from Ohio County moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. Senate will please come to order. Further resolutions?
No, sir.
Motions? Petitions?
I have a petition presented by Senator Seipolt from duly registered voting residents of Senatorial District 14 in Tucker and Preston counties, with 45 signatures opposing Senate Bill 270, authorizing DNR implement cultural management for state park lands.
Petition will be received and referred to the Committee on Natural Resources. Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Requesting unanimous consent to return to the fourth order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration Senate Bill 430, originating in committee, relating to encouraging collaborative agreements between community and technical colleges and federally registered apprenticeship programs, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Craig Blair, Chair.
Report will be received. Further reports?
No, sir.
Unfinished business.
There is none.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 163, authorizing DEP promulgate legislative rules.
Senator from Morgan.
Recognize the Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent for leave to offer an amendment on third reading of the bill.
Senator from Morgan requests unanimous consent to offer an amendment on third reading to Senate Bill number 163. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk has an amendment.
Senators Smith, Romano, and Trump move to amend the bill on page 3, section 1, lines 26 through 33.
The question for recognize the Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of its reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. The aggregation of sponsors on this amendment probably scares the body, but it is compromise language that we worked out. The members will remember we laid this rules bundle over, I think, for the first time on Friday and then again yesterday, and there were questions that had been raised as to one of the rules, and it was the rule relating to surface mine reclamation. And we have agreed upon some compromise language that we hope the body will adopt. And this was done in consultation, Mr. President, with the Department of Environmental Protection. But the new language will require that the operator before there could be any kind of bond release, has provided irrevocable financial assurances in a form satisfactory to the Secretary through a contract or other mechanism enforceable under the provisions of the law as delineated in subsection 1.3 of the rule, 11.3 of the rule. And I'll pause there for a second and say, and he may wish to address it himself, but the Senator from Harrison felt that it was very important that there be that cross-reference. And so that's included here. Adequate to provide for long-term treatment of the drainage as required by the Federal Clean Water Act, the West Virginia Water Pollution Control Act, and the operator's NPDES permit. Be happy to try to answer questions about this compromise language. Otherwise, urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Further discussion? The Senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to rise and just say that this is a great opportunity to us to look at a rules bundle and realize, I think, how complicated they are. You know, when a special interest comes to you and wants to change something, it's generally because they got a dog in the hunt and it's going to benefit them somehow. I think it's incumbent upon us to really look at these rules bundles, and I know they're complicated and long, but with the help of my chairman from Morgan and the gentleman from Tucker, I think we've make the water in West Virginia safe and keep it clean, because without the financial responsibility being guaranteed on cleaning mine water drainage, I don't think it would take very long for companies to go out of existence and those obligations to disappear and fall on the state. So appreciate the compromise, and certainly think working together is better than working in two different groups, and I think this is a good example of that. I am in favor of the amendment.
Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed, and the clerk will read the bill a third time.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 163, authorizing DEP promulgate legislative rules. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief because I went through the explanation in detail on Friday. I'll say again, this is our DEP rules bundle. It contains 10 rules. We refer to it as bundle number 3 and the manner in which we bundle them. I won't delineate again what they all are, but 10 modifications of existing rules, 2 repealers, as we discussed on Friday. With the amendment the body has now adopted, I urge passage.
Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and requesting unanimous consent. The roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
The senator from Ohio County moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 165, authorizing DHHR promulgate legislative rules. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 165 is our DEP rules bundle, and it, of course, went through the legislative rulemaking review process all year long. Excuse me, DHHR rules bundle. It went through the rulemaking review process all years long, and then through the Committee on Health here in the Senate, and now the Committee on the Judiciary. It contains, I'll just go through them quickly by description. There's a rule from the Department of Health and Human Resources relating to hospital licensure in the bundle. There's a rule from DHHR relating to food establishments in the bundle. That was originally Senate Bill 166. There's Senate Bill 167 is a rule relating to public water systems. What was originally Senate Bill 168 and rolled into this committee substitute is a DHHR rule regarding emergency medical services. What was originally Senate Bill 169 is a DHHR rule relating to West Virginia clearance for access, registry, and employment screening. What was Senate Bill 170, it relates to the development of methodologies to examine needs for substance use disorder treatment facilities within West Virginia. What was originally Senate Bill 171 is a rule that relates to the collection and exchange of data related to drug overdoses. What was Senate Bill 173, I skipped one. What Senate Bill 172 was a DHHR rule relating to financial disclosure. Senate Bill 173 was a DHHR rule relating to child care licensure. Senate Bill 174 is a DHHR rule relating to family child care facility licensing requirements. Senate Bill 175 is a DHHR rule also relating to family child care home registration requirements. Senate Bill 177 is a DHHR rule relating to informal and relative family child care home registration requirements. SB 178 relates to out-of-school time child care, an out-of-school time child care center. SB 179 relates to the pilot program for the drug screening of applicants for TANF, for cash assistance. And there are two repealers in this bundle. We're repealing a rule that related to opioid treatment because it's been superseded by another rule, and that was what's repealed is codified at 69 CSR 7, and the rule repeals a certificate of need rule that has also been superseded by another rule. I'd be happy to try to answer questions of the members of the Senate, otherwise urge passage of the bundle.
Further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and requesting unanimous consent the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Ohio County moves that the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 284, increasing access to career education and workforce training. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I start explaining this bill, I would like for the members to know that I put a 5-page explanation on your desk. You'll see my signature on the top of it for everybody. And rather than me explain for 5 minutes, I did a little bit of a compression here for us from that matter, but there's a lot of good information in that. With that said, Senate Bill 284 authorizes 2 separate programs being aimed at increasing access to career education and workforce training. First, the bill authorizes advanced career education programs, and I'll probably refer to this in a few minutes as ACE. The ACE program The ACE program will connect community and technical colleges and career technical education centers with county boards of education in order to create defined educational pathways that begin when the student is in high school and ultimately lead to associate degrees. The second part of this bill creates the West Virginia Investment Grants Program. Under the investment program, the Council will award grants covering the full cost of tuition at any eligible community technical college to qualified applicants. The bill also requires the Council to report on success and retention rates of the program and authorizes the Council to promulgate rules. The bill sets 11 eligibility requirements for the grants, which include 1, being a West Virginia resident, 2, having completed a secondary education program, 3, having not already been awarded a post-secondary degree, 4, being at least 18 years old, 5, meeting the admission requirements of the applicable community and technical college, 6, meeting any additional qualifications of academic promise established by the Council through rule, number 7, having completed the free application for federal, state aid or student aid. Number 8, being enrolled in an eligible program. 9, being enrolled in at least 6 credit hours. 10, completing West Virginia Investment Grants application form. And 11, passing a drug test prior to each semester. The investment grant will be renewed for each student until the course of the study is completed as long as the applicant maintains a satisfactory academic standing, including a grade point average of at least 2.0. Also is making progress towards completion of the program and is demonstrating satisfactory participation is in the community service program to be implemented by the council. The bill also requires that each recipient of the West Virginia Investment Grants enter into an agreement which requires the repayment of the amount of the grants awarded to the recipient in whole or in part if a recipient chooses to reside outside the state within 2 years following obtainment of the degree or certificate for which the grant was awarded. Lastly, the bill creates in the state treasury a special revenue fund to be known as the West Virginia Invest Fund, which is to be expended for the purpose of administering the West Virginia Invest Grants Program. The fiscal note estimates the cost to the state on this is $8 million. I reserve the right to close, and I urge passage, Mr. President, and I'm open to any questions.
Further discussion? Further discussion? The junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand today in support of this bill. I'm a convert, I must admit, when I came to the Senate and I heard about free community and technical college education, I was a little concerned. We all know nothing in this world is free, but the more I learned about the structure of the program and the safeguards that are in place, my skepticism turned to optimism. This program has the potential to transform our state and keep our sons and daughters home. And if you'll entertain me just a minute, I'd like to say how community and technical colleges have affected my life. And, you know, my father graduated from high school in 1961 and immediately entered the workforce. He drew great satisfaction from a hard day's work. And by the time my brother and I came along, he was working for the Betsy Ross Bakery down the road here in Canal City. Sometimes he did route sales and drove a truck, but what he really enjoyed doing was working the docks and loading the trucks. In about 1978, the Flowers Bakery bought Betsy Ross Bakery, and my dad found himself unemployed. The Chemical Valley at the time was still a very active place, and so he began making application to many of the plants that are here in the valley. But without experience or any training, the offers just did not come. So his search turned from inside of West Virginia to the Carolinas and to the Midwest. Leaving West Virginia was almost a foregone conclusion. At the same time, he enrolled in a chemical operators training program at the local technical school. He studied hard. I can remember he and my mom, and I was really young, going back and forth, and he wanted to get not just straight A's, but 100%. He said the competition was steep, and he needed to be at the top of his class in order to get a job. Afterwards, he did get a job. He was received an offer from one of the plants here in the valley, and we remained in West Virginia. Today, between my brother and our wives and our children, there's 7 of us. Community and technical college worked for my dad. It kept my brother and I here raising our children instead of in the Carolinas or in the Midwest. I envision this program doing the same for more of our citizens and affording them career opportunities that let them stay in West Virginia and raise their families. Mr. President, I urge passage of this bill.
Further discussion? Further discussion? The senator from Monroe County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, rise in support of Senate Bill 284, and it's an honor to get to support this bill. I think this is something a long time coming. Our committees on education, finance vetted this bill thoroughly, and I commend the senators for that process to make sure that everyone had an opportunity, and we opened a lot of doors to make sure no one's left out. And in my opinion, this bill fills a request from our business and industry folks out there that have urged us to really help and do things to support growing our workforce here in West Virginia. And I think we've answered that call in this bill. And I'll say that if everything goes well, I hope our colleagues over in the House sees it this way as well. So, you know, I think this bill, in my opinion, deserves a so-called moon landing speech. And I know technically today we're not physically landing on the moon, but you know, for education in West Virginia, maybe we are. And as I said in our education committee, I want you to remember this day and remember that we voted this through and changed education in West Virginia for the better. And so that, with that being said, Mr. President, I'll say this. This bill is one small step for this legislative body and one giant leap for education and the people of West Virginia, and I urge passage of the bill.
Further discussion. The senator from Wyoming County.
Bill, I think this bill is going to help a lot of young mothers and a lot of young adults that think that they can't afford education, not even for community college. And there's a lot out there that would go to community college. They just can't afford to do it, even with grants and with college scholarships. I, for one, know when I first started trying to get a better education for myself as a young mother, I took classes everywhere, anywhere I could get them. I took correspondence classes from Penn State. I took from every college they are in their local area and even their state on that end. I have taken some classes somewhere at some time trying to get what I thought I needed to do to have a better life for my family, and my husband did the same thing. And without community college, and as cheap as it was then, we couldn't have done it then. And with this, I think people that think that they can't even afford that, they'll be able to go on and get an education, because, you know, education has nothing to do with how much money you make, you know, how old you are, where you come from, what families you're from. Education should be available for everybody, everywhere, to be able to go as far as they can go in life. And I think this bill will do that. Thank you very much.
Great. The senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, you know, this has been a pretty good group effort. And I remember when you stood back here and championed this bill, you know, we all got behind it. And I think it's a real achievement for West Virginia. And, you know, of course, it couldn't have passed without you guys, because you're all in the majority. But you did it. You embraced it. And I just want to say that I think the Education Committee moving the age down to 18 was a major change, you know, because it takes the children who we were going to lose between 18 and 20 and gives them a pathway to success. You know, I remember President Bush's No Child Left Behind. By changing this age and what this has done, we truly will leave no child behind in West Virginia, because every one of them will get the opportunity to have a good career and make a good life for their families. And I thank you, Mr. President.
The senator from Upshur County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm much like the senator from Putnam, very skeptical about the idea of yet another free handout that we're going to promise to the folks of West Virginia, particularly their kids, that we, you know, in many ways might not be able to afford. And so as I saw this bill moving through the process, and we had both internal discussions as well as committee discussions and so on, and we made sure we put in appropriate safeguards to help control the cost, as well as to tailor the program in a way that is really focused on moving kids in West Virginia to the workforce in West Virginia, so that it's not something, because I see us constantly training folks in our higher education institutions to work in a different state, but this is clearly designed to try to keep them here, keeping them working in West Virginia. And so those kind of solved a lot of my concerns, the way we approach that. Because I very much believe in the power of education, but I also very much believe in the power of the appropriate education. And I think that this answers a part of the question that has really needed to be solved for a while, this idea that everyone should run off to a four-year institution and get a four-year degree in something as though that's the magic solution for the world. And it always left out the fact that we have a lot of tradesmen in West Virginia, but we need a lot more. We need plumbers, we need welders, we need IT technicians, much like what I am, and that this bill answers that question to say that it's not just about getting an education, but it's about getting an education that's really appropriate in terms of the needs of the state, as well as in terms of the needs of the individual students who will be getting this education, that we're actually targeting this at a place that we have not been properly serving in our higher education institutions, and that is for these tradesman roles, for the 2-year roles that are really going to fill a lot of needs in West Virginia. And so I'm rising in support of this bill, and I urge adoption.
Further discussion. The senior senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I want to change the focus a little bit. We've all been talking about community and technical colleges, but let's go to the heart of one of the main components of this bill, and it's the advanced career education. If you go back, and let's give Dr. Kathy D'Antoni, a lot of credit. Her doctoral dissertation was the EDGE program, earn a degree, graduate early. That means that you go through and start in high school and you can graduate from a community college early. You also take the simulated workplace that she's been doing in West Virginia, where you look at the issues we have with drugs, and kids have to come in, they have to check in like they're checking into work, they have to do a drug test, and then you add in what the Southern Regional Educational Board has done in the advanced career curriculum. We're also the only state in the country that's looking at this at the middle school level. We have to expose kids to what are out there in career pathways early in life, so they can make choices by the time they can get into high school that this program will afford them to. These are the opportunities that we've been looking for a long time. I think the other element of this is how you tie this in with the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce is going to be looking out there for what kind of jobs that we need and make sure that those pathways are filled. So to me, one of the major elements of this bill is the fact that a kid at the 9th grade, where we don't have slots for them now, can actually see that if I do this in the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, I automatically go into this program at the community college level, and most likely I'm going to graduate early. And I'm going to go out into the workforce making more money than sometimes you get in a 4-year degree. We've got to make these things available to students. We've got to show them what those pathways are, and we've got to articulate those in such a way that they can see that they can stay in West Virginia and they can have a good life.
Further discussion. The senior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't intend to speak, but this is a momentous occasion. I think we'll look back on this in years to come and say this was an important day in the state of West Virginia. Helps me when I hear the comments from the junior senator from the 4th talk about and puts a face on this bill. And for me, this bill will be known as Michaela's bill. A young woman on the west side of Charleston who's been attending Bridge Valley, who has aspirations of being a graphic artist, but she's been going one semester, taking off a semester to earn the money to go the next semester. My wife's sort of adopted her as a surrogate granddaughter, and she's helped her, encouraged her. And there's nothing wrong with personal responsibility, and she's doing that, and she continues. But it's young people like Michaela who'll benefit from this, who'll be able to get that education, get a job, support her family, escape the things that hopefully so many others will be able to escape in this district, which is close to me on the west side of Charleston. So I thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership. Thank you all for supporting this, making the bill better in committee and by amending it. This is a wonderful opportunity to improve the lot of many Michaelas in the state of West Virginia.
Further discussion. The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this bill and strong support of it. And if the members will indulge me a little bit, I want to tell a little story that sort of brings this home for me anyway. And it's a Procter & Gamble story. And so when Procter & Gamble made its announcement about coming to the Eastern Panhandle, all of us knew at some level that that was going to be a game changer, that it was a very big deal for West Virginia, for the area where we live. I live in Morgan County, which is the next county over, and we were happy for our friends and neighbors in Berkeley County without thinking that there would be much necessarily direct impact on Morgan County, which is farther away. But it just shows you never know what you don't know. And this bill ties into this. Let me, if I can. Everybody knows Procter & Gamble makes the most famous brands in the world. They are household names to everybody. Dawn, Bounty, Oil of Olay, Head & Shoulders. There are dozens and dozens. Crest toothpaste, brands that every person knows. In Morgan County, in Berkeley Springs, in the little town, we have an old county hospital. It was built in the 30s, the original part of it, as a home for crippled children. There are pictures of FDR coming to Berkeley Springs, you know, for the dedication of that. A new hospital was built within the last 10 years, and there were questions for a long time about what would become of that building. Well, let me tell you what's become of it. Because it really is exciting for all of us in Berkeley Springs. The people at Procter & Gamble, to whom I've spoken and others have spoken, have said the most important thing for us is quality assurance, because all of our products are personal. They're used by people on their skin, their hair, toothpaste in their mouth. They have to have the most exacting and rigorous testing of every aspect of it. You know, way before it ever, you know, gets a brand label, and through the production process that has to occur. Every raw ingredient that company takes in to make one of its famous products has to meet exacting, rigorous specifications. So, the people at Procter & Gamble said, we have chemists, we have, you know, physicists, but we have chemists, but not all of the people we have to have. We certainly have to have some that have master's degrees and bachelor's degrees in chemistry, but not everybody who's involved in that process has to have that kind of degree. And so, it's really a great story. In conversation with Pete Chekovich and Ann Shipway, the folks at Blue Ridge Community and Technical College, what they've done for Procter & Gamble is designed a degree program, an associate degree program, which is, I guess it's a lab chemical technician. And they are teaching people to run, I'll try to make this story shorter. They've taken over the old hospital in Berkeley Springs. Mr. President, we never thought we'd actually see a physical presence of Procter & Gamble in Morgan County, but they've taken over the whole wing of a hospital. And if you walk into that room, you'd see long rows of these, I'm sure they're ridiculously expensive, gas spectrometers and devices that are used to test the purity and standards of the ingredients that go into Procter & Gamble's products. And in Berkeley Springs, in that building, a combination of a degree program crafted by Blue Ridge, Procter & Gamble, they're training people to do that lab testing under the supervision of the master's and bachelor's degree chemists. But people are operating high-tech machines. We'll be in Berkeley Springs doing that critically important testing. It just shows to me anyway, it's not something that 2 years ago I ever would have conceived, but it shows what can be done with community and technical colleges working together with the private sector, and what it's meant for, and what it's going to mean for in the future for the people in my area is, I think, truly remarkable. And this bill, Mr. President, opens that door. It's going to open that door to kids, not just in Berkeley Springs, but all over West Virginia, who have opportunities. You know, we talk about the jobs of tomorrow, and in truth, we stand here, we don't know what they are. But our community and technical colleges, our four-year colleges, are in the process of crafting those. And they will be, we want to make them nimble to be able to respond to the needs of an ever-changing, seems like the older I get, the faster the rate of acceleration of change is. You know, there are moments when I feel like the technology has just passed me by, but I'm excited for, you know, our children, our grandchildren. And this bill, Mr. President, opens the doors. And so I support this bill, and I want to compliment you. I compliment Governor Justice, our colleagues on both sides of the aisle. This is an important step for the future of West Virginia, and it brings home what we mean when we say we're going to have a workforce ready for the jobs of tomorrow. I urge passage of this bill.
Further discussion? Further discussion before I recognize the senior senator from the 15th to close? Senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. A lot of great remarks here today. The word momentous was used. Perfect description of where we're at here today. I want to add just a couple short remarks, then I'm going to be done. But one of the things that we're actually doing here is adding a tool to the toolbox of guidance counselors in this state to help people like me and others. We're also adding tools to the toolbox for job creation and job retainment and businesses wanting to locate here. I guarantee you we're going to see the day when this pays dividends to the state of West Virginia. And here's why. We hear all these things what businesses are looking for. Well, when you have the lowest amount of students with associate degrees and bachelor's degrees and things like this at least gets our associate degree numbers up. That has a bearing on businesses wanting to locate here and expand here, and that in turn grows the tax base so that we can do other things for the people of West Virginia, including pay raises. But we can't do it the way that we've done it in the past. I've dreamed about this since I was a farmer riding a tractor, 21 years old in Berkeley County growing apples and peaches. Because when I was in school in 1976 and 77, they really wanted to push you to college education. You got to go to a four-year. It didn't fit for me, and it doesn't fit for a lot of us. But we can still be very, very, very productive. And I've got to add one last thing to this. When you put people into the workforce, it takes them off the entitlement rolls. That in itself pays dividends and also attracts business. We get the people in our state back into the workforce. This gives them the opportunity for that. Next to workers fixing workers' comp, I believe that this is the very, very best piece of legislation that we will have passed out of the legislature, and I can't wait to see this board light up green. Thank you, Mr. President, and I do urge passage.
Further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the remarks by the junior senator from the 4th, the senator from Wyoming, the senator from Harrison, the senator from Monroe, the senator from Upshur, the senior senator from the 5th, the senior senator from the 8th, the senator from Morgan, and the senior senator from the 15th be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Clerk will communicate the action.
Let me go again.
Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective July 1, 2018. Request unanimous consent the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective.
Senator from Ohio County moves that the bill be made effective July 1, 2018, and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective July 1, 2018. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 285, establishing regional recreation authorities and areas. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this bill, Senate Bill 285, is to create enabling legislation to permit multiple contiguous counties to create a regional recreation authority for off-highway vehicle trail riding. The regional recreation authorities would be joint development entities, which current code allows 3 or more contiguous counties to form. The bill is modeled on Chapter 20, Article 14 that created the Hatfield and McCoy ATV Trail. Its provisions are largely identical. I would accept questions, but I urge passage.
Further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk has a title amendment.
Senator Maynard moved to amend the title of the bill.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the title amendment adopted. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 338, changing date for employers to file annual reconciliation and withholding statements. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 338 is offered by the Department of Revenue and amends the current law relating to the employer withholding taxes. First, the bill updates the filing deadline for employers filing their annual reconciliation of personal income tax withheld. Several years ago, Congress moved their filing deadline from February the 28th to January the 31st. This bill aligns West Virginia law with federal law by moving our filing deadline to January the 31st. This will make compliance and administration easier. Second, under current law, employers must file a withholding return electronically if they file a withholding return for 50 or more employees. This reduces that number to 25. It also requires employers to use payroll service to file electronically. The Revenue Department has a hardship program that will allow them to waive such requirements if they have a legitimate problem. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Further discussion? Not. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 34 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 393, relating to compensation and composition of West Virginia Racing Commission.
The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Requesting unanimous consent the bill lie over 1 day, retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Further bills on third reading?
No, sir.
Bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 10 relating generally to PSC jurisdiction.
The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Requesting unanimous consent the bill lie over 1 day, retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 46 permitting pharmacists to inform customers of lower cost alternative drugs. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 71 defining veteran as it pertains to veteran-owned business. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 184 authorizing DOT promulgate legislative rules. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
If not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 237, authorizing Department of Revenue promulgate legislative rules. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Romano moved to amend the bill on page 2, section 1.
The senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very simple amendment in the rules bundle that we are passing here and one we've already passed. It simply mirrors, it has the rule mirror what we've already done in the Department of Highways with regard to the same rule with the same purpose. And that particular rule we have proposed and passed that the Commissioner shall comply with West Virginia and federal law prohibiting nepotism, favoritism, discrimination, and unethical practices related to employment and promotion in the public employee grievance system. The Department of Taxation bill lacks that language. In fact, it has entirely different language that the Commissioner shall not influence or attempt to influence the employment or working conditions of his or her immediate family. It leaves everybody else out in the department. I think the amendment simply brings both rules in line with each other and provides the protection to our public employees that we want to have and to avoid bad employment practices within our agencies. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Further discussion? Recognize the senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. He is correct. It adds some anti-nepotism language that exists in the rule regarding division of highways, but is absent in this, and it should be there. So I urge the amendment's adoption.
Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment as offered by the senator from Harrison County. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not. The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 242 requiring health insurance providers provide coverage for certain Lyme disease treatment. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Takubo moved to amend the bill on page 1, section 4.
Recognize the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read and that all amendments be considered as one.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, this is a technical amendment only. It corrects mistakes in the section headings of the bill. It does nothing to change the nature of the bill. I urge passage of the amendment.
Further discussion? Further discussion. Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the amendments as offered by the junior senator from the 17th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Further amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Maroney moved to amend the bill on page 1, section 38.
Recognize the senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read and that all amendments be considered as one.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The senator may proceed.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, this amendment is straightforward. This bill basically provides for coverage by insurance companies operating in West Virginia to continue long-term antibiotics for Lyme's disease, which typically requires maybe triple the length of antibiotics than most diseases that we treat. The bill also provides additional coverage for experimental and off-label use and requires insurance coverage for those uses as well. My amendment would remove that second requirement, so it would remove the requirement that says additional coverage for the experimental or off-label use medications be mandated, and would keep the prior mandate intact. Unfortunately, we do often require or mandate insurance coverages for specific procedures for some specific treatments only when necessary or when problems arise that obviously prompt the legislation. However, requiring coverage and mandating insurance coverage for experimental and off-label use of drugs should be left up to the individual insurance companies to decide. Long-term antibiotics are relatively inexpensive and usually effective in treating Lyme disease. Lyme disease does affect West Virginia, but just a small portion in the eastern panhandle and the northern panhandle. And those should be treated because the long-term use that we are mandating for the label use does significantly improve the outcomes in these patients that do suffer from Lyme disease. So in summary, the amendment will mandate the label use, but the off-label and experimental uses are not to be mandated, and that is what the amendment says. I urge passage of the amendment.
Further discussion? Further discussion? The senator from Upshur County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to the gentleman's amendment. While I think it's well-intentioned, as I noted in the Health Committee when a similar amendment was offered, one of my sons has Lyme disease, which actually, I don't live in one of the panhandles. I'm right in the heart of West Virginia, and apparently he picked it up there. And we did the, out of the box, the standard course of treatment for Lyme disease, and it didn't solve the problem. And so we wound up actually in Ohio with a doctor over there treating this, and it was a very extended period of antibiotics. And I'm concerned that Lyme disease, on the one hand, may be that you can treat it with the standard course of treatment, which is an extended course of antibiotics, and it works most of the time. But when it doesn't work, this is a very debilitating disease. There are people, I think, all over the state of West Virginia that have it, although probably more predominantly in the north. And we have to kind of recognize that the standard courses of treatment aren't always working for Lyme disease. There's a significant incidence where it doesn't work, and we have to be willing to work with that. And I would point out in discussions I've had with some of the folks in this chamber that are in the medical industry that it's not entirely uncommon for insurance to cover off-label use or experimental treatments. It's not an everyday thing, but it does happen, and this would just be another instance of where that occurs, and it is a serious problem. And so while I think the amendment's well-intentioned, I do rise in opposition to the amendment.
Further discussion? Further discussion? The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just stand in support of the gentleman's amendment. There are many times that physicians will use other medications for off-label uses, and this by no means means that those won't be approved. The concern that I would have, and I know insurance PIA had specific concerns. For example, there are many medications now, immunologics or chemotherapy, for example, that if a physician felt that they should treat it for Lyme's disease, they could put a person on chemotherapy, and insurance would be mandated to pay that, which by many standards would feel is not only not indicated, but not be in the best interest of the patient. And that's the only concern, is that it does kind of pigeonhole companies into providing sometimes immunologics, for example, can be tens of thousands of dollars a month for something completely non-indicated and potentially harmful if they wanted to just experiment with the patient. So I've got some concerns with that. Most insurance companies oftentimes will pay for off-label uses for medications for many diseases, and this in no way would prohibit that. It just wouldn't absolutely mandate that those experimental things had to be treated. So for that reason, I would stand in favor of the gentleman's amendment.
Further discussion? Further discussion? The senator from Preston County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the chairman yield, please?
The junior senator from 17th yield?
Yes, I would.
Senator yields.
This is kind of curious to me. I was wondering what other disease treatments, maybe you're not aware of this, what other disease treatments mandate off-label and experimental treatments be covered by insurance? Is this something that's unusual for a mandate, or is that something which is very common?
I don't know of any disease state that that there's any mandate for an experimental or off-label use that is mandated that it has to be covered. To my knowledge, there's nothing that exists like that.
So if and the amendment here was to remove that mandate from the bill. Is that correct? Am I understanding it?
That's correct.
And you support leaving the not supporting the amendment, or you do support the amendment?
I do support the amendment.
I see. Thank you.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Senator wish to close debate? Recognize the senator from Marshall to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. The senator from Preston actually made a point that I was going to make in closing. It is not unusual to treat diseases with off-label uses. For instance, chemotherapy helps some arthritis patients. Insurance companies make decisions to cover that once the data is available and these off-label treatments are proven effective. But what is unusual is, and maybe unprecedented, is to mandate such off-label uses. So I would urge passage of the amendment.
Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment as amendment. Question before the Senate is adoption of the amendments as offered by the senator from Marshall. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 267, increasing salaries of certain state employees.
The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Requesting unanimous consent the bill lie over one day, retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 327, providing extortion of anything of value, including sexual contact, subjects person to criminal penalties. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 384, decreasing and increasing appropriations from State Fund General Revenue to DHHR.
Are there amendments to the bill? Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Requesting unanimous consent the bill lie over one day, retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Senate Bill 385, decreasing and adding appropriations out of Treasury to DHHR and MAPS. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Senate Bill 388, decreasing, increasing, and adding appropriations out of Treasury to DHHR and Department of Administration. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading. Further bills on second reading?
No, sir.
Bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 336, providing certain DMV applicants ability to contribute to West Virginia Department of Veterans Assistance. First reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. Further bills on first reading?
No, sir.
Introduction of guests. The senior senator from the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure, along with the senator from Jefferson and the senators from the 15th, to have a very special friend here, an outstanding teacher in the gallery, Doris Tuckweller-Wood from Berkeley County Schools. If she would stand and receive a warm Senate welcome.
Further introductions? Remarks by members of the Senate. The senior senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. There was an open forum last night at Spring Valley High School addressing public education. I wasn't there, but I heard shots were fired toward me. But I'm flattered, though, that things had to be fabricated in order to come up with something negative about me. So I'm a product of public education. And in this state, we have to make public education one of the most important things we do, because you know, the little Christian schools and homeschools, that's a definite important part. But the majority of our kids are going to be educated in the public education system. I graduated from Wayne High School in 1990, and it's near and dear to my heart. And if I could go back to one time in my life, it would probably be from the years 86 to 90 when I was in high school. You know, just a great time. Great teachers, great students, friends. When my daughter went through Wayne Elementary School, I volunteered every day, and I would change letters on the marquee. And when she went to middle school, I did the same thing, and they had some old lockers there, and I'd bring tools in the morning after I'd drop her off and tighten up bolts and fix doors and till about 9 until I opened my business, and then I'd go start my day. Then when my daughter went to high school, she was on the softball team, and she played since she was in the 2nd grade, and I was asked to be the announcer at the home games. And to this day, that will probably be the highlight of her softball career for me, getting to announce my daughter and all the friends that I've witnessed growing up, and it was just a very special time. But after she completed her freshman year, she wanted to go to a Christian school. She's raised in the church, and you know, how could I tell her no? She wanted to, you know, be in church with prayer and, you know, with Christian values. And so even though my heart was in Wayne High School, my alma mater, one of the few left high schools that hasn't been consolidated and, you know, combined with other schools, it's such a pleasure to go to my home high school football game, and it's the school I went to on the field that was going on when I was there. But since everybody's so interested in my public education bills and just my education bills in general, I thought I'd list and talk about every single one that my name's been attached to. So I hate to tie up the session any longer, but it was just in my heart to talk about it. Senate Bill 19, my idea, as my daughter was going through middle school, it was hard for me to know what chapter she was on, when her tests were, and when her homework was due. Long before I ever became a senator, I went to the Board of Education and went to the principals, you know, wanting to know how I could find out this information. My daughter, you know, said they would skip around from chapter to chapter, you know, unlike when I went to school, we'd go chapter through chapter, and sometimes she didn't even have a book. But I really couldn't get any answers, so I thought when I was elected to the Senate, you know, I want to do this to get those parents involved with a schedule where they could have a three-way communication between the student, the teacher, and the parents to know when homework was due, when the tests were going to be, and what chapters they were covering. Now, I know that all parents wouldn't take the time to do that, and I probably may have missed a few days, but when I did have the opportunity to read a chapter with her, and actually I could have probably learned some stuff myself that I missed when I was in middle school. But, you know, it got fought with opposition, and I was merely just trying to do the right thing. And every single bill here that I have attached my name to, I'm just trying to do the right thing. And that's what I told myself to do when I was up here. I'm not going to worry about a special interest group or who's got money or who's going to donate. I want to do the right thing for West Virginia. And if I leave here, then I'll be able to sleep at night knowing that I tried my best. SB 20, electing the State Board of Education members. I found out that that's a constitutional amendment that would need to take place. Bill drafting didn't catch it, but nonetheless, I was just looking out for the best of this state and thinking that'd be a good idea to let those members be elected. SB 28, that's the one that was mentioned last night. And, you know, lots was said, you know, about how bad of a bill it was. I'll tell you the whole genesis of that bill. I was at a Board of Education meeting in my district, and they were begging me and other legislators that they are losing applicants that are good qualified employees for a position that is not available. So let's say there's going to be a vacancy in the future of a posting an employee or teacher that's going to be retiring. They were complaining that there's good applicants that they lose that may go to another state or may go to another industry that they're not able to kind of secure for this future vacancy. SB 28 was only for that reason, just to give them a way to receive an application for a future vacancy. Now, you know, it's been twisted into something that, you know, I hear different things about it, but that was the intent, and I really think that's what the bill would do. SB 29, counselor student aid. I read in a legislature paper that it would be good if all students, all seniors, were presented with and asked to file for student aid. Some students, you know, that may not even think they were eligible for college or higher education may be eligible and through student aid be able to do it. But counselors, I had a counselor contact me and said that there's students that wouldn't even want to go to college, so there's no need to really make them apply. And, you know, you never know how a student would be toward higher education if he knew he could get a free ride or at least help. Also, they use the excuse that grandparents don't have time for the paperwork, but, you know, again, I was just doing it because I felt like it's the right thing to do. I wasn't asked to fill out any student aid when I was in high school, but I would have liked to have been asked. SB 128, it's a $1,000 tax deduction. I was lead sponsor on those bills, and I added my name on to this one, SB 128, which is $1,000 tax deduction for public school teachers for supplies that are bought for the classroom. And also, it's a $500 tax deduction for non-public school students that to help out with supplies and stuff that are bought. SB 130, I signed on to this one, Tim Tebow bill. You know, I just hate to see private schools and home schools that aren't able to participate in school activities. However, I do realize there does need to be a cost incurred and something done with probably the school aid formula to allow for you know, equipment, uniforms, and the such. SB 349, nobody's talking about that one. It's a 3% teacher pay increase. For some reason, you know, the teachers haven't mentioned any support for that. With PEIA, you know, I've been getting lots of information on it and lots of emails, and you know, just to let everyone know here, maybe that's listening in the budget bill that's supplied to us on the first night of session, it's already line itemed in there, and I trust our finance committee on both sides of the rotunda and the governor to come up with the best thing to do for that. And I look forward to voting on that budget bill, and appreciate your time today.
Further remarks? Further remarks? Miscellaneous business. The senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Request unanimous consent. The remarks by the senior senator from the 6th be printed in appendix of journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Senator from Ohio County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Finance Subcommittee B will meet today at 3 p.m. We have budget presentations from the Department of Transportation, Parkways Authority, and the Department of Commerce. Thank you.
Senator from Monroe County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Education will meet this afternoon at 2 p.m. in the Senate Finance. The agenda is posted.
Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Judiciary will meet this afternoon at 3 p.m. in 208 West Wing.
Senator from Tucker County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Energy, Industry, and Mining will not meet today. We will meet Thursday. Thank you.
The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Health will meet in 341M at 1 p.m. to discuss the Governor's Opioid Reduction Act.
The senior senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet at 2 p.m. in 208 West.
The senator from Marshall County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Economic Development will not be meeting tomorrow.
The Senator from Brooke County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Republican members will be caucusing in the President's office directly after floor session today.
Further announcements, the Senator from Upshur County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Pensions will be meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. and 4:51 m., and the agenda will be posted.
The Senator from Monongalia County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder to all members that today is Montague County Day, and lunch will be served for all of us in the government org room on the House side. Thank you.
Further announcements. Not, question before the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m. All right.